second. I'm refreshing.
All right, just got the notification.
And we are live on social media. What up, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and fellow YouTubers? We are back on YouTube. Fred and not Scott this week, joined by special guest Ryan Schammel at Terps_BSpert on Twitter. What's up, Ryan?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good, man. Glad you could be a part of the show. Thank you for filling in for Scott, who's doing the finer things in life.
Yeah, thanks for having me. He's
enjoying his cruise,
floating somewhere.
Yeah, he's out at sea, and I think in Honduras is where he said he was. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
not even thinking about us. Wow, I can't even talk already.
Don't piss off the guys with the guns, Scott.
I don't think he's drinking the brew of the week. It's more pina colada where he's at.
Yeah, drink the pina coladas. Leave the guys with the AKs alone. Don't want to get caught up in that. We're getting ready to go live here in just a couple minutes. We got a lot to cover on the show. As always, the Orioles playing decent baseball. We're going to talk about them and their series up in Boston. We're going to talk about the Ravens. Their offseason workout programs are getting underway. After a pretty hot start, Capitals get knocked out last night.
Somebody got knocked out.
Somebody got knocked out in that game.
Somebody got knocked out.
The Terps might be losing a couple of starters here. Neither named Jaylen. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Brian, you getting things up there on Big Play?
I'm working on it.
All right. Make sure you guys grab a brew. If you didn't get the brew of the week last week, grab your favorite cold one. Sit back. Enjoy the show. Make sure if you got any comments, you leave those in the comment field. Use the hashtag #That'sBLBS, and we'll try to get them on the show and work them in as much as we possibly can. Ryan?
What did we tell you?
Silence!
I'm trying to share this, guys.
Silence!
I'll mute you.
I straight muted my phone. It didn't work.
Damn mute buttons.
I can't lose my share status just because I'm a host now.
I know.
Right?
What are we going to do in the comments? Because 90% of the comments are typically you.
Yeah.
Ryan or Brian, you've got it pretty easy this week, I think.
I hope my cousin Bryce shows up because he's the only other one that talks Terps in the comments section.
He does like to talk Terps.
I feel so left out.
It'll be just Brian asking questions to no one once we get to the Terps section.
I'm out, man.
Luckily, I can just list off some Terp stuff.
Oh, man, we're getting everything going on all of the social media platforms before we go live here in just a minute.
I'm just a talking head. Scott has talent, so I'm dragging the show down a little slower. Everybody,
no, not at all.
Just the beginning. I mean, I'll probably be worse the rest of the time too, but the beginning I can't help very much. I'm not a techie.
I don't know if we are actually working on YouTube right now. Figured I'd give it a shot. If it worked, yay. If it didn't, oh well.
Took a while on Facebook, but it is now going.
I don't think
right. Oh, no, we are live on YouTube. It is working. All right, cool. Like I said, make sure you guys get your questions in. Let us know if you're in the chat room. Say hey. Let us know that you're there. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always.
James welcoming me to the show on the Facebook chat.
What's up, James? Why is the chat not working in here?
Did you click refresh?
It doesn't. It's an app. It really doesn't have a refresh.
Well, I'm seeing people are there.
All right, cool. It'll maybe pop up here in a minute.
This is what happened when we did the live bracket. You guys kept telling me I wasn't picking Duke fast enough.
That's right.
Turns out you should have asked me Duke a couple more times, and I might have got it right.
How you coming along with it, Brian? You need help? You
I'm getting there.
All right.
Got that there.
Let us know, like I said, if you got any questions or anything you want us to talk about. Obviously, the Ravens, I thought the Ravens' schedule was announced tonight, but it's actually announced tomorrow night. So I thought that would be a topic of discussion, but we'll get into that next week.
I guess the big thing with the schedule is just what primetime games they're going to give us.
What primetime games, exactly. What, obviously what time of year you're going to be playing certain opponents.
See if they make us fly across country and then play the Steelers, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So we'll get into that next week. Unfortunately, I thought for some reason that it came out tonight, but it comes out tomorrow. So
Is it the Steelers or the Browns now we're worried about flying across country and having to play? I don't know.
Jesus.
Browns are going to be dangerous. That's for sure.
I like seeing the Colin Cowherd and the quarterback.
I don't think I have all the
All right, Brian.
credentials.
Hold the fort down. I'm going to go try to help Brian here.
All right.
All right, so 3.
Somebody talk to me in Facebook land. How about that?
All right. So go there.
They are working out the technical difficulties.
Edit post.
Oh, Ricky,
I'm doing it from.
you should find out if Sarah can do anything with that.
See if I can do it from. See, I need to get Flash. See, when I get it from here, that's as far as I get.
Yeah, I don't think you can do it on the phone.
All right. I should have Flash. I'm surprised I don't. All right. Let me
All
get
right,
this-
my
let me get
wife
this
and
wrong.
twin daughters are in the room. It only counts as one follower, but it's 3 people, so that works.
Let me see if I can get it up on my end. Sorry about this, guys. Scott is not here today. Scott usually takes care of some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that
It's first time for me, so you
first
know.
time for right, exactly.
So
We
working out
got
the
you.
kinks,
We got you. I'm gonna.
which I don't understand.
There's no nursing things I can take care of right now, so I'm nursing this beer over here. It's a nice brew of the week. I'm almost out. I'm not going to have any beer to drink during the review. No Scott, James. I apparently am taking your spot. Holding down the fort for you.
How's it going, James?
Ryan Hewitt decided not to partake. He gave the reins to me this week.
Run this.
As soon as they get streaming on all the platforms, we will get started with the show. Thank you, everybody that joined early to listen to some clicks on a keyboard, try to figure this stuff out.
Trying to get this thing figured out. I wish I would have paid a little bit more attention when Scott was explaining things. Might have helped.
All right.
Few less brews of the week.
I think we need more brews at this point in time. Alcohol refreshes the brain, makes the brain more powerful.
True that. There we go.
You getting it?
I think so.
Did I not have all the options?
No, you do.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's all right.
Facebook's working, so what are we going live on now?
That's the last one.
We're going live on Big Play.
Big play. Okay. Yes, big play is very important. Our partnership, you can't leave out big play.
That's right. All right, we are good, and we are cross-posted on Big Play.
Thank you, Fred.
No problem.
I'll figure what the hell I did wrong.
All right, guys. Well, I'm as ready as I'm going to be. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry for the delay. As we get things rolling here. You guys ready?
Let's go.
Let's go.
All right, let's do the damn thing.
It's that time, so let's take it to the Birdland. That Baltimore home flavor is coming firsthand. Fred, Scott, and Ryan, tell them the word, man. Mixing a little BS to make it work, man. Sports, they got it. On excitement, the topic. Make sure when they toss you the ball, you don't drop it. With all that swag, you're gonna listen regardless. Here comes the pitch, so it's time to get it started. It's Birdland BS.
What's up, BSers?
What's going on, fellas?
Fred, Brian, and special guest Ryan. Oh, that's going to be difficult.
That's going to be difficult.
Brian and
Brian
man.
and Ryan.
It's like I'm back at work again.
It's like my whole life.
For you guys that are familiar with the show and tune in every week, this is Ryan Schammel. He's a guy that's always active in all the chats
Always
with us every week, giving us our insight to the Terps and more.
Yeah, most likely just waiting for the Terps to talk.
Oh, you'll be fine.
He's
You'll
bored.
be
He's
fine.
bored with the rest of it. All he cares about is the Terp side.
Casual fan for the rest of it, I guess.
If you're
my Turtles.
If you're not aware, Scott is, like I said earlier, out enjoying the finer things in life, out at sea in Honduras somewhere right now on a cruise. He will be back next week for next week's show, but Ryan's going to step in and fill in for this week. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, man.
It's all good, man.
We had a lot of stuff to cover on the show, man. The Orioles playing pretty good baseball up in Boston. The Ravens, they're getting underway with their off-season workouts. Kind of cool to see, a lot of the big names, a lot of the guys that, don't necessarily have to be there because it's all voluntary workouts, getting in and getting their work in early.
Yeah, you got your injured players showing up and getting back to work.
That's right. Well, some of the new guys, trying to make a name for themselves and trying to lead by example, veteran leadership, when obviously this team lost a lot of its veteran leadership. We'll get into this in a little bit, but glad to see that happening. The Caps had gotten off to a hot start in the playoffs, but took a punch in the mouth last night. Or somebody took a punch in the mouth.
Somebody got knocked.
Somebody got the bell rung last night.
Yeah, they got 3 wins so far. 2 of them games and 1 of them a fist fight.
Mike Tyson style, man. That was brutal.
So we're going to talk some Caps, and then obviously with Ryan being on the show, we're going to talk some heavy Terps today too, possibly losing 2 starters on the basketball team, neither of which are named Jaylen.
Yeah, you got 2 going to test the waters in the NBA. We'll probably lose at least 2 starters, but I don't know if they're the 2 going to the NBA.
But before we get into too much, we want to remind you guys, if you're in the market to buy or sell a home, if you want someone that's going to go to bat for you, call our guy John Scheffenacker over at Redfin now. I almost said Cummings & Co. I got to update that. Over at Redfin now. John's been in the business for 4 years now and is dedicated to getting you the best deal possible. He's always available to take your call anytime, day or night. For you Oriole fans out there, you may know him as the guy with the orange button down, the black tie, the backwards hat, and the sunglasses sitting behind the dugout at Camden Yards. Give John a call today, 443-604-6298. This is typically where Scott would chime in with his normal John story.
Yeah, I don't have a pie story
I
yet, but I guess I could do my own version.
Tell us a little bit about pie and whatnot. Yeah. Ryan, you've actually had firsthand experience. You were actually one of the first referral customers that picked up John's name from our show.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with John.
So I received an email about pie from John this week.
Nice.
He was just announcing to his email list that he has switched to Redfin and that he will continue his Thanksgiving pie delivery was part of this email. So apparently Scott's thing is in.
Right.
But I gave John a call. We were looking at a house up in Phoenix, and he was very responsive, came out the next day. And he actually came out for my little sister who just moved back from Texas too and has been working with him. It's been really nice. And he was on vacation for them too one day and had somebody immediately cover for him and get them in a house. So
that's awesome.
I can be very similar to Scott's story, I guess.
That's very similar. Very similar. So make sure if you are in the market to buy or sell a home, give John a call, or you can email him at John Scheffa. That's JONSCHEFFA@gmail.com. And don't forget to tell him Birdland BS sent you. All right, Ryan, I know this is going to be your most exciting topic to talk about. We're going to talk about some bros, bows, and O's.
Woohoo!
I know you are not the biggest of Oriole fans, really not the biggest of baseball fans, but it's been a while since this, team has been being competitive on a regular basis. So
I'm an above average casual fan. I was really into the team 2 years ago and even most of last year, and even the losing with the bigger names is more okay with me because I'm the typical NBA fan that likes LeBron James and whatever team he's on. I'm a name guy. Which is very difficult to be
that guy.
The name guy when we have a bunch of players on the O's right now that don't have names. But the other thing is I can get into and I can learn new names. I just can't get excited whenever an Oriole does well because I assume that they'll be traded for 6 other players whenever they do well. So how can I invest into the individuals? And since they're telling me that the wins don't matter, even though they're doing better than anyone thought,
right?
What does that matter?
But that's the beauty part. So if like Scott and I and Brian being diehard fans, you can see the value in some of these prospects that we've gotten back already in some of the trades that we've made for Machado and Scope and Gosman. And that's kind of really, if you're looking at turning this thing around the right way. That's what you're looking for. Is you're looking for some of these names. Unfortunately, it may even be a name like Trey Mancini.
Yep. That's what we discussed last week. I'm scared that even Trey, with all the years of control we have left, how young he is, he's our biggest trading chip right now. So why would he not disappear for 5 or 6 prospects?
And I know for a lot of fans out there, that would be hard to swallow because Trey is the one guy you can kind of hang your hat on as like a fan favorite or even a guy that you might go out and buy a jersey for. Outside of that, who the hell are you buying a jersey for on this team? But the thing is, this team is so far away from being where they need to be as an organization, not just as a 25-man roster, as an organization, that you really got to capitalize on the players and the chips that you have when you can. And again, if this team was 2 or 3 pieces away, maybe you keep a Mancini because you're only those 2 or 3 pieces away. You can get that through free agency. But this team is much farther away than that.
I'm a fan of the plan. I just can't become a fan of the players because I understand the plan. I understand that these players
you can't
will not
get
be
that
here.
emotional attachment. You don't want to do that.
I'll be like, oh, Villar's doing great. Well,
then
Villar's
how do
gonna
you
leave.
do it? How do you do it as a college fan, right? Because you know those players are only going to be around some 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
Well, luckily I'm a Maryland fan, so we have a few less 1- and 2-year players.
Touche.
We have 3- and 4-year players for the most part.
That is absolutely true. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, we're going to recap a little bit what's kind of happened so far this week. Obviously, the big news, we're going to get into that in a minute, is Chris Davis getting off the snide. So they wrapped up their series in Oakland, which we had talked about prior to getting off the air last week. The other Chris Davis, the one that spells his name with his K.
The real Chris Davis.
He had a monster series against us. Back-to-back games with 2 home runs. You don't see that very often. You know, you'll see the 2 home run games occasionally, but to have back-to-back games with 2 home runs, that's pretty impressive.
He is very impressive. Surprisingly, the Chris with the K has many less Ks on the year than the other Chris.
Yeah, very true. The one thing I saw in that series, and he's pitching tonight. Dylan Bundy continues to struggle and get beat by the long ball. This is a problem that we've seen really since he's come up. And it's progressively gotten worse as his velocity has dropped. You're really starting to see where players are not just making contact, but they're making solid contact and driving the ball over the fence. You can't have that out of supposedly one of your best starting pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, to see Jay Musante in here talking about wanting to see the kids play, and that's a really good point. And I do enjoy seeing our young talent. Yeah, we don't have any young talent with the pitchers. There's no talent as far as I can tell on the pitching staff.
Well, on the current staff, on the current 25-man roster, there's really not too many guys that you can get too excited about. I mean, obviously, John Means has been kind of impressive so far, a guy that I didn't really have many expectations for, and it's still early to pass judgment, but he's done okay so far. David Hess, he's kind of up and down. He'll have a really good start, and then he'll have a really bad start. So there are some pieces that could potentially be 4th and 5th kind of guys once you have a solid top of the rotation. But again, a lot of these pieces that are in the current rotation aren't going to be here for very long. We're hopeful that Alex Cobb and Andrew Kashner can pitch well in this first half, turn things around a little bit, and become trade bait where they can get a piece or 2, hopefully in the long run.
Yeah, you're going to need a lot of young pieces, and only some of those are going to work out, so you need more and more every year.
That's exactly right. So we'll talk a little bit about the Boston series, which was impressive to me. Orioles go into Boston and split the series 2-2. To some, that might not be super impressive, but when you're talking about a team that was supposed to, and we're going to get into this in a minute, a team that was supposed to come in, hands down, if not win the division, be right there in the thick of things with the Yankees and the Rays at the end of the year, possibly for a wild card. For a team like the Orioles, like you said, a bunch of no names kind of going into a series like this, they held their own. And that's what I've liked about this team so far, is that they don't back down from anybody. They've gone in New York and they've beat the Yankees. They've gone into Boston and they can compete with the Red Sox. To me, that speaks volumes of this team and this team's character.
So maybe it's all the fans' fault. Maybe we got no fan support
No
down
faith.
in Camden Yards, and they can't play in front of us. When they go to real stadiums with packed out fans, they're playing really well.
Well, one guy that I talked about a minute ago that kind of got off the snide Chris Davis finally gets his first hit in what was a huge game for him. So it wasn't just about the one hit. Obviously, the one hit was great. Finally kind of getting that
monkey off your back.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I thought it was kind of cool and funny at the same time that he actually asked for the ball. Did you see that in the video?
I did, and apparently he asked his manager before the game, which he must have known he was getting better in the batting cages. He asked him whether it was Bush League to ask for the ball.
Hell no!
And the manager said, no, I think it's kind of cool.
I do too.
They
I do
put it
too.
back.
You know, that's going to be, I mean, that's part of your legacy, whether good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't matter. It's still part of your legacy. And hopefully at the end of this thing, he comes out on the better side of things and you can look back and laugh at it and be like, God, look how bad I was at this point.
And if that was
career.
his only hit that game and he went on another 30-game slide, then that would have been pretty embarrassing that he had that ball. But he really, it seemed to be a turning point. I mean, he hit 600 that day.
Exactly. Went 3 for 5, 2 doubles, 4 RBIs. I mean, broke out in a really big way. He followed it up, not the next game, but the following game by hitting his first bomb of the season. Now, again, it was in a short porch in right field. It wasn't a 450-foot shot. But
I think they said it was 385, so it wasn't a bad shot.
So it wasn't a bad shot.
And he showed power a couple different times because right before that home run, he walked the dugout and broke a bat over his left knee, which is always impressive to me. They do it like it's a toothpick. I would literally break my leg if I try to do that. I don't understand.
Now, this I thought was kind of interesting. So he picked up 2 more RBIs on that home run. Credit to Ian Schultz of Charm City Birdwatch for this. Chris now has more RBIs on the season than Mookie Betts and Chris Bryant. Just saying. Just saying. Considering this guy didn't have a hit until the other day.
So he has timely hits, is what you're trying to tell me.
Productive hits.
Productive hits.
Very productive hits. So I like it. Hopefully, like you said, hopefully he can kind of string this together. Like I said last week, I genuinely feel bad for the guy. I mean,
as much as you can feel bad for somebody making more than you'll ever see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, there's 2 sides of it, right? The side of me that gets frustrated and angry is the side where I don't see the adjustments, which makes me think that he's not putting in the effort that he should or pulling at any possibility of changing things by just making some sort of visual adjustment. There are minor things that apparently he's been working on behind the scenes that maybe to the average eye you won't pick up on in the batter's box, but I just haven't seen anything. So that's the frustrating side. The other side of it, as a sympathetic guy and a guy that actually has a heart, I feel bad for the guy. He doesn't want to go out there and not hit the ball. This guy wants to do well.
He wants a superlative like you created for him.
Exactly.
As I see you're getting nice credit for in the comment section.
Hey, don't give me the credit. I found that online. Somebody, I wish, I didn't know where it originally came from, but I thought it was cool. I had to use it. But no, I genuinely feel bad for the guy. I'm happy that he's kind of gotten the monkey off his back. Hopefully he can, string this together and continue to move forward. We'll see.
Yeah, I tweeted out earlier this week. I think that really you have to take Chris and you have to have 2 different batting averages. The batting average you're going to see for the year and the batting average since this first hit.
Right.
And they're 2 totally different numbers.
I think he's batting almost 090 on the year now.
Yeah, it's like 086 on the year, but it's actually like 450 since his first hit.
I personally, at this point, if he can figure it out and end up finishing the year at 200, that would be such a win in my books. I mean, we were talking about if he's not hitting 200 or above at the end of the first month of the year, the Orioles just need to cut bait with them.
They didn't do that.
They didn't do that. It doesn't look like they're going to do that.
0 was not low enough for them.
No, 0 apparently it's not low enough. We'll see what happens with this team. I really thought they would have that mentality of, hey, I'm the new GM. Hey, I'm the new manager. This kid isn't my problem. This is your fault for signing this guy. But who knows? I don't know if upper management's saying, hey, do everything that you can to try to get this guy figured out. We're not going to win anyway. We're not expected to compete. So what would it take? We're going to be pissing this money away, for lack of a better term. We need to try to do anything that we can to get this figured out.
No matter what he does, you're going to eat all or most of this contract. But if he all of a sudden is showing up, he could still be a trade piece if you agree to pay a majority or all of the contract.
Right.
You could still get something for him. So maybe they're thinking that if he turns around, that's what they do. Because again, who do you have as trade pieces outside Trey Mancini? Right. They thought that Givens might be a trade piece. They thought that Bundy might be a trade piece, and that's not showing this year.
Right. So two guys, and you mentioned this earlier about young starting pitching or pitching in general. Starting pitching on this team has been problematic already this year. Two guys that pitched pretty well in this series. I mentioned him earlier, John Means. Now, he didn't get the win. Neither did the team because the team just didn't hit this game. But Means went toe-to-toe with one of the best pitchers in the game in David Price and really held his own for 5 innings. He had 4 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, and 3 Ks, which brings his ERA on the year down to 1.98 so far on the year. Again, a guy that for me is kind of flying under the radar here, going up against one of the premier pitchers in the game in David Price, goes toe-to-toe. Now, the Orioles do lose the game 4-0 because, again, the bats fell asleep. Didn't do anything against David Price.
Well, the bats were actually going against David Price. He just happened to be playing the same game as him.
Right. But when Means turned it over to the bullpen, it was only a 1-0 game. So, you know, you're a big hit away from taking the lead. Yeah. So, impressive in my book. And then the other guy, a guy that Scott was kind of harping on in his first couple of starts, and really a guy that I had a lot of faith in. I thought was a smart value pickup late. Dan Straley got off to a horrible start in his first 2 outings. I think he kind of righted the ship yesterday a little bit. Yesterday, he picked up the win, went 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, and 2 Ks. Mind you, he had a no-no going into the 5th inning in that game. So 5 innings, I would have liked to have seen him get through 6, maybe even get into the 7th. So from an inning standpoint, I'm not too happy with it. But look, again, he put up a really, really good start after having 2 really lackluster performances.
Could be a really good pickup. Again, you know, they're buying these contracts to give them to somebody else as long as they can show them off. We got all the time in the world to show off your pieces. They're not going for W's. They just happen to happen.
That's right. Now, the big story that's kind of been going around social media around the Orioles right now, manager Brandon Hyde gets ejected for the first time in his managerial career in this game. Now, this was kind of a debatable topic, and I'll kind of lay it out for you. And I was on one side before I read the rules, and now I'm on the other side. So the point in which Brandon Hyde gets thrown out of this game, he's arguing a hard slide into second base by Rafael Devers on what could have been an inning-ending double play. The argument that Brandon Hyde had was, what's the point in the rule when somebody aggressively slides into a base with intent to try to hit the player and break up the double play? That they've put a rule in place to prevent that. So, and when you watch the replay and when you actually watched it happen live, my first reaction was, he's exactly right. What is the point in the rule if you're not going to imply it? But once you actually read through this rule, and I pulled it out just so that way I could go through the verbiage, right? So I'm going to read the rule straight out of the rule book. If a runner does not engage in a bona fide slide and initiates or attempts to make contact with the fielder for the purpose of breaking up a double play, he should be called for interference under this rule. A bona fide slide for purposes of this rule occurs when the runner, 1, begins his slide before reaching the base, which he did.
True.
Is able and attempts to reach the base with his hand or foot, which he did.
Yes.
Is able and attempts to remain on the base, except home plate, after completion of the slide. And this was the one that kind of had people like, well, I don't know. Look, the way I take this rule and the way it was written up were for the guys, and I don't know if you remember or you know, how short-term some of our memories can be. Some of the way that guys were sliding into the base was completely obvious attempts to take a player's legs out. They were sliding so far away from the bag that I don't care if they reached out and tried to touch the bag in any kind of manner. They were nowhere near the bag. And they were tripping players up who were trying to touch the base and get out of the getting out of the base path.
They were sliding towards center field, basically.
Exactly. In this play, the second baseman stays on the bag and the runner slides through the bag. He stays on. His arms are still on the base. This was a play where the second baseman didn't jump high enough to get over the runner, didn't make an attempt to do that, and really give the runner full access to the base like he's supposed to. You can't block a base in any kind of way. So once I actually read the rule and I read through that, I don't agree with the rule because I do think that the slide was aggressive and I do think it had intent. He had intent to break up the double play. He wasn't going to slide out of the base path because the player wasn't out of the base path.
But I think the argument starts at number 4 that you haven't even gotten to.
Okay.
Slides within reach of the base without changing his pathway for the purpose of initiating contact with a fielder. He purposefully initiated contact with that fielder.
But my point is, so he slides in feet first, right?
Yes.
90% of the time, when a player is sliding into to second base and a second baseman is standing on the base, if he's not catching the ball and crossing the base and getting out of the base path, he is jumping over the player that's coming into the base path. He made no attempt.
A foot first slide is designed for your foot to stop on the bag, not your hand to stop on the bag. He did a foot first slide towards the bag and then stopped on the other side of the bag with his hand barely touching the base.
With the intent
to hit the second base.
And that's my point. I do think that the intent was there, but basically reading through the way that this rule is laid out, he followed the rules. I think the rule needs to be amended if they want to get rid of that altogether from the game. But I do think that the call on the field was made correctly, in my opinion.
I would say that he was 3 out of 4 on the bona fide slide rules, which means it is not a bona fide slide.
75%.
I know Brian wants in on this because we was getting a little heated before the game.
My thing is, though, I would like to hear from the umpire after the game. If you're going to have these instant reviews, I would like to hear an explanation from the umpire. That's all I want. I want transparency. I want to know how the umpire saw the call. Let him step up to the podium. Okay, this is how I saw the call, and then you can compare it to the way.
This is why we didn't overrule it.
Yes, yeah. I want to see an understanding. That way, maybe it'll change my mind somewhere down the line. I mean, I would like to see that from the NFL referees as well. I want an explanation of why you made this judgment. That's all I want.
Right.
But I honestly, I have to agree with Ryan. There was intent there.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Kind of like what Manny Machado did. I mean, when he went after Dustin Pedroia with that slide,
that was nearly the same slide.
You could
no, because he was much.
Pedroia had his legs further up.
Yeah.
I mean, he had every intent to knock out Pedroia. In a way, it was kind of similar, but not as much. But you could tell he was trying intentionally to break up the double play.
But I think smartly, if he knew the rule. If the guy, I don't know in the heat of the moment if this guy really knew the rule or not, he played it well because, again, the player, I don't remember if it was Villar or if it was
I think Martin. It was Martin. I think it was Martin.
Martin made no attempt to get off the bag. He didn't elevate himself. He didn't cross through the bag like most players do when they're turning a double play. He stayed on the bag, and the guy had nowhere else to go. The only way he avoids contact in that going in feet first is if he hits the front side of the bag and stops on a dime. It's the only way he doesn't make contact.
Which is what professional athletes do in baseball.
Well, if I remember.
But if the rule is written the way it's written,
then you can purposely not do that.
You could purposely not do that.
Is the problem.
The intent. And I don't disagree with you guys at all on that. I don't disagree at all. But if he knew the rule going into, kudos to this guy because he was smarter than everybody else.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. So
that's right.
It's baseball for you, 101.
That's right.
That's why I try to steal signs.
So that's kind of my take on it. Now, last week we had kind of added a new segment with the Orioles. We talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly from this past week. We also had the Davis in there because it was so bad that it couldn't get any worse. I removed the Davis only because he had a good week, so I'm not going to have that this week. We're just going to talk the good, the bad, and the ugly. For me, the good, John Means. Like I said, I've been talking about him all night. The Orioles didn't win his start, but when you're talking about a starting rotation with some guys dealing with injuries and some guys really, really struggling, it was nice to see a not-so-big name step up with such a big game and go toe-to-toe with one of the best in the game.
You got to have somebody show up, right? You can't have all terrible pitching.
That's right.
Well, you're not going to get a lot of starting pitching like Hess every time he plays against Toronto, where he's getting a chance to get a no-hitter, and then, but yeah, you are right, Fred. It's nice to see that the Orioles pitchers are attempting to step up to help alleviate the bullpen, which is totally getting exhausted at this point in time. I mean, that's great to see, and I'm praying we see a little bit more of that down the line.
Ryan, the bad. Who did you got?
The bad, they got Joey Rickard. If not for Chris Davis's horrible start and for the season, we'd be paying more attention to Rickard's struggles at the plate. 2 for his last 19 at the plate, 5 strikeouts. Caught stealing a couple of times, not being smart on the bases.
Yeah, I mean, that's
not much to show.
Essentially it. I mean, across the board, other than really making a nice play on opening day, he had a nice diving catch, Joey Rickard has been struggling. And it's frustrating because I feel like there are some guys down in the minor leagues that Scott and I talked about prior to the season, whether that's Austin Hayes, whether that's DJ Stewart, some other guys. I mean, the whole, oh, Christ, what's the kid's name that we got for Yusniel Diaz? Besides him, you don't want to bring him up too early because you don't want to lose the eligibility. You've already done that with Austin Hayes. You've already done that with DJ Stewart. Why not have these guys up here? Because Rickard, I mean, like I said, if Davis isn't on this team, we are hounding Rickard and really Mullins. Mullins has been super struggling at the plate. But Joey Rickard, he just looks lost out there. He looks lost on the base paths, doesn't look like he knows what he's doing out there sometimes, and it's frustrating.
I can't tell why Rickard would be here because no one could see Rickard's history and think he was ever going to be a trade piece.
Right.
So what is his role?
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to, well, I mean, Adam Jones would have been a better trade piece, but it's like, yes, Adam Jones is a better player than we have, but why have him blocking a spot? Why is Rickard blocking this spot?
Right. I agree. And the ugly for me has to be the supposed big dogs of the AL East. The Yankees are now 6-9, and the Red Sox just split a home series to the Birds and are now 6-11 on the season. The Tampa Bay Rays, who we just started a series with tonight, sit alone in first place at 12-4 on the year. Just to put this in perspective, the Red Sox have the highest payroll in baseball at $222 million this season. The Yankees aren't far behind in third at $208 million. The first place Rays, last in the bigs with $60 million in payroll. The Orioles, third from last with 74. Now, I know it's early, and at the end of the year, the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to find a way to get there. I get it. But they are both off to horrible starts.
That's
and
true.
I know their fan bases have got to be hitting the panic button.
And if you can exclude Davis's contract, the Dairy Queen down the street has a higher payroll.
I need to get on Dairy Queen's payroll then, apparently. I'll be putting in an app after the show. Jesus. All right, so you had kind of hinted on this prior to the show. We had talked about it. For a fan like yourself who may not be a diehard baseball fan, might not be a diehard Oriole, if you were like deciding whether you were going to go to a game or not go to the game, what would be a draw for you to go to this game? As an average fan, what would pull you into the game? Is it the young players? Is it something about the environment of the stadium? Is it just the beauty of the stadium? Like, what about it would bring you out to the ballpark?
Yeah, I go to the ballpark for great weather and great atmosphere and because we have Camden Yards. But, yeah, I mean, maybe the end of this year, maybe middle of next year when I have the younger kids up that I think we're going to keep. Because if we start bringing up these recruits now, these minor league players.
There's the Turpin, your recruit.
Recruit, exactly. We start bringing up the minor league players from the farm system at this point. In my head, it means they're giving up on the people they thought were trade pieces, and now our minor league players are the trade pieces because we're too early in the rebuild.
Right.
You have to get into this before I can become emotionally invested in individuals. Again, I still fully support the Orioles. I'm not flipping to any other team. I will go to a few games. I went to opening day. My first opening day ever is during this disastrous season. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot more fun before first pitch than during the game.
Was this when you had beer all over the front of you and you were randomly doing push-ups in the middle of thousands of people?
Near Pickles. You got to stay swole. You do what you got to do.
Stay swole.
Got to get them in when you can. Work them in when you can. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, for me, it's got to be some of the youngsters out there, the young guys getting their shots and that kind of thing. Yes, there's some young guys still down in the minors that I'd like to see. What I want to start doing, is I want to start getting out to more minor league games. You know, we're really a hop, skip, and a jump from the Ironbirds up in Aberdeen. Scott and I went to a couple games last year, had a lot of fun doing that. But a team, now it's a little bit more of a drive, obviously. A team that's doing really, really well for the Birds right now. If you're a diehard, get out and watch the Delmarva Shorebirds. Apparently the team is off to an 8-1 start on the year. They've got one of the Orioles' top prospects down there in Grayson Rodriguez. He was the number 1 pick, I think 11th overall in the 2018 draft last year. He was just named the South Atlantic League Player of the Week for the Shorebirds. The 19-year-old who was drafted out of high school in Texas won 2 scoreless starts on April 5th and 12th, combining to give up just 3 hits in both games, all singles, and 5 walks while striking out 20 over 11 innings.
It's my old stomping grounds. I met my wife in Salisbury, lived there for 8 years. It's a pretty cool stadium, not anywhere near the Ironbirds quality.
Typical minor league.
But they have $2 hot dog Tuesdays and $5 32-ounce beers on Thursdays, so I spent some Thursdays there.
There you go. Well, through 11 league dates, Rodriguez is one of just 5 starters with a perfect 0.00 ERA, ranked 2nd in the league in strikeouts with 20, a batting average against at .086. Sound familiar?
No.
Sounds like Chris Davis's average. .086, as well as 8th in whip at .73. I also saw this. I don't know if you got a chance to see this, Brian. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter the other day, but one of the trade pieces that we got back in the Kevin Gausman deal, JC Encarnacion. And I love when Gary Thorne talks Encarnacion.
It's like he's going French.
It's hilarious. He had a walk-off grand slam the other night to win a game. It's cool always, anytime you see a walk-off hit or a walk-off home run, it's cool. But this dude hit a walk-off grand slam, and I mean, he just slow walked it out of the batter's box.
Right next to that left foul pole, about 8 feet from the parking lot.
It kind of had like that that old Boston antics where you're just like kind of trying to wish it inside of the foul pole there to win the game. Exactly, man. It was awesome.
Surprised
awesome
he didn't do the Joe Carter thing. Holy crap! I won the World Series.
We were there.
Wait a minute, I missed the first base.
They had a local coin dealer that had a sponsorship out there, and if they hit the sign, it was like straightaway center field, like 450. It was a small sign, and you won a $10,000 gold coin. Somebody in attendance, and me and my wife were both there.
Where was this?
At Salisbury at the Shorebirds game.
Wow.
And it hit off the scoreboard, and everybody's like, "Holy crap! Do I have 10 grand now?" We didn't win, obviously. It'd be a much better story if we did, but it was pretty cool. And of course that sign disappeared, never came back, because I guess that team never thought it was gonna. Or that business never thought it was going to get hit.
Right.
it was the last day of that sign.
But minor league baseball in general is a really fun product. If you haven't been out there, get your kids out there. It's much more of a family environment. They do a lot of things to involve the kids. Players are more interactive with the kids. Chances of getting foul balls and
they let
souvenirs.
you throw stuff on the field.
Right.
My favorite part was they sold tennis balls for $5 a bag
to throw in hula hoops.
You throw them at the hula hoops.
Oh, it's awesome.
I love that. That is the best thing.
Right.
Some days I would be on there on the 32-ounce beer night, and I'd spend $30 or $40 on tennis balls.
Jesus.
Who gets to throw stuff onto a field?
Yeah, right. And a lot of times they'll bring the kids out for like relay races. They do all kinds of stuff. So if you've got kids and you haven't gone to a minor league game and you just can't get behind the Orioles, or maybe you don't want to go downtown for all the reasons that a lot of people are avoiding going downtown, get out to your local minor league stadium and watch some of these young guys. It's a lot of fun.
Yep, we got to check out a Bowie game sometime.
For sure. All right, man. It is time for our brew of the week. This week, it's the Diamondback Brewing Company's, which we had a couple of weeks ago, but this is their DQ'd double vanilla. Another vanilla. It's supposed to be like a milkshake. IPA is kind of how I don't really taste the vanilla that much. It's a very good IPA, 7.7 India Pale Ale. It's an American IPA brewed with loads of oats and wheat, heavily hopped. They aged this batch on an even larger addition of vanilla beans and carefully added lactose sugar in order to refine the body. Vanilla makes a change from their typical fruit additions, but lends a sweet, creamy profile that allows the best qualities of an IPA to shine through. It is a good beer. It's a very smooth beer. Brian, you were a big fan of it. You like it?
I like this a lot. I mean, it's nice. It goes down smooth. It's what does Scott say about one beer? It's sweet and creamy.
That's right.
Was that what
It's
he
got
was
an
saying?
awfully fine body was what Fred
baby.
just said.
Yes, it does. No, see, Scott, you're not even here, and we're already picking on you. We don't miss you at all. But no, this is a very good beer, and I think if I ever see it out in the wild at one of my local brews, I'm definitely going to pick it up, especially if I'm down at the liquor stop. I'll definitely pick up a 4-pack of this. But yeah, this is a very, very fine beer.
Yeah, make sure you get out to Liquor Stop on Conowingo Road up in Hartford County. Tell them Birdland BS sent you. Get your 10% off. All right, Brian. It's time for a social media shout out.
I don't think I want to, man. Ryan, your wife is talking about the Bachelorette in the live chat, man.
You know, I saw that.
Can you control this?
It's
What's
not my
going
wife.
on in the chat room?
My wife is
I'm
being a
asking the same
poser.
thing.
I'm going to call her out right here.
This thing's getting out of
My
control.
wife did agree that this was a little bit too much sports talk. She can't hang. But if she's pretending to know anything about The Bachelorette, she's a liar, because we have two 2-year-old twins at home, and I can't get her to watch the TV I like, much less Bachelorette. So it's not. That's all what she says about that. If it's happening, is not true.
That's hilarious.
I mean, between her and Nikki, it's just like, what is going on? They took over the live chat. It was like a Bachelorette takeover, and all I
Hey,
said
you know,
was,
they count as viewers. It doesn't matter. Talk whatever you want.
Nikki says Scott's missing the men talk about floral vanilla beer.
I did like that. I did like your wife said we should do an Ironbirds Birdland BS Day. I'm sure we
that
could
was good.
easily put that together. We should do that.
And something else that Nikki Reedy said too, which made me almost spit my damn beer out, which was funny. She's like, the real award of the week should go to, or hang on, I said this wrong. The award of the week should go to the real slugger, Ovi.
Oh yeah,
There you go. I mean, we'll get to that.
Touche, Nikki. We're
that-
gonna bring that up here in our cap segment. But yeah, that
was-
definitely could have gone to Ovi there for the old knockout win.
Yep. I've seen seen my cousin Bryce out here.
Yeah.
Corey
Yeah,
Flores, a
Stephen L.
graduate
Jackson.
of mine and Scott's.
Nice.
Paul
Jay.
Jackson, the close family friend.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Kamal Porter's hanging out there. Speaking of Kamal, he was talking about how the Caps got their ass kicked.
Samuel L.
Yeah.
Jackson said he followed me on Twitter.
Nice.
Hey,
Yeah, there
I've
you
gone
go.
from 8 followers as Salisbury Rockstar to 16 followers as
That's how you
Birdland
do it.
BSpert.
Double
I'm
it up.
doubling this.
Double it up.
32
go.
by fall.
Hopefully-
Let's do it.
By the end of the show, we'll be over 20 for you.
Oh my! Now we're
That's
talking
our goal.
big numbers.
If you're not following him, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Terps_BSpert.
I actually had a tweet featured by Terrapin Times today, which
Right.
I thought was pretty hilarious.
A guy with 15
I have
followers.
15 followers, and I was featured by a newspaper. I haven't even told my wife this yet because she was at school. I made
He's
a
going prime time, man.
Yeah, I made a comment about all these guys blowing up about Anthony Cowan going to NBA draft, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I just told people that you need to stop being so aggressive because they can come back until May 29th. You should be treating them like recruits. It's like, well, your mama said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I even put that if you're a bad person, just do it because they can come back. Like, be selfish.
right.
Treat them nice until the 29th. Then act like a bum if you want to act like a bum. But do not cost your team and any other recruits that are seeing how the fans are acting. Like, please think before you get on social media. If you're overreacting to Terps news like this, number one, you need to get your stuff together, because I'm a really big Terps fan, and I'm not going to freak
really
out
big
about
Terps
that.
fan? You're like
But-
one of the ultimate Terps fans. Let's not lie
I
here,
don't know,
man.
maybe.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. Before we get into the Terps, let's talk a little bit about the Ravens. We mentioned it earlier. The Ravens kind of started their voluntary offseason workout program yesterday. And like I said, I think it's cool that we get to see some of the big names. Really, pretty much everybody was there. You know, obviously QB1, Lamar Jackson, he was there. A lot of the rookies from last year, Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews, he was there. But some of the new guys that are trying to make a name for themselves in the locker room and get to know guys, Earl Thomas, Mark Ingram, the big signings in the offseason, they were there. And I think that speaks volumes to who they are and what they're going to mean for this locker room moving forward.
Something funny I saw was that QB2 Robert Griffin III came in twice because he forgot something in the car.
I did see that.
And if you took a look at it, it sure looked like the playbook.
Yeah.
I really hope that parking lot has better security than some places, so it's
Playbook
probably
for sale.
fine.
Oh, that's true. I did see that video. But one of the things that's going to be happening with the Ravens here soon is the team's going to be hosting a bunch of visits with top 30 ranked prospects in this year's draft. They did have DK Metcalf in yesterday, I believe. They're going to have Marquise Brown in. If they didn't have him today, I think they'll have him in tomorrow. Metcalf posted a picture on Twitter about sitting in the room. They were literally giving him a physical right there. And he seemed to be kind of surprised and thrown back that the team was giving him a physical. Like he posted a picture of the medical room and at the bottom it just said, "For real? Like this is for real?" I thought that was kind of interesting. What else do you expect? I mean, you are an absolute freak of nature as far as physical just size and sculpture. I mean, this guy literally looks like a statue, like
So
somebody carved him.
I'm a DJ Metcalf fan from what I know. Now, if I was a Ravens exec, there's a few things I need to know. I need to know if he plays like a Raven, because with that body type, even if he failed out as a number one receiver, you can do a lot of things for this team. He could be dominant gunner on punt team if he's willing to do it. He could be dominant in the blocking game. He can, you need to know whether he's a diva or whether he's a football player.
Right.
And because of that body type, even if people want to bring up Perryman, that's what everyone's, he blew away at the NFL combines. They want to bring up Perryman. Well, what blew my mind with Perryman was they never used him in any way. I'm a Terps fan. In college, if you have too many wide receivers, your wide receiver goes and plays cornerback. Or if it's not working out, you go help your team in some other way. Perryman was getting paid to do nothing, and they never used him to do anything else.
Which I agree with that take to an extent. When you're talking a first round draft pick, a first round draft pick is typically a perennial Pro Bowler, a potential Hall of Famer. Like typically when you look at the history of things, these are the best of the best. Right?
Not our last few first rounders.
Not ours. Exactly. And that's been part of the problem, right? The Ravens, when it comes to the wide receiver, obviously we all know the history and the problems that they've had with drafting wide receivers. The one glaring issue that's been a problem with this wide receiver core for years has been people with drop issues, wide receivers with drop issues. And as much as this guy checks off so many boxes as to why he would be a great fit in this offense, your number one assignment and your number one responsibility as a wide receiver is to catch the football. And there's a lot of people out there who say, well, things like that, there's techniques and things that can be taught and learned. I'm sorry, but if you're at this point where you're about to get drafted into the NFL and you haven't figured out how to catch a damn football at this point in your career, what makes you think it's going to be any different in the NFL? Let's see, a la Brashad Perryman. He was exactly that.
I think we're gun shy because of Perryman. I think you may miss out on a perennial all-star, as you put it, because Perryman exists. Perryman did have hand issues. Mr. Metcalf here, as many drops as he had, he also had one-handed circus catches.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
You didn't see that from Perryman ever. Perryman needed two hands in his chest, no one around him. Also, contested balls with Perryman was a joke because he was too tiny to contest them. Have you seen Metcalf? I'm not even going to bother contesting it.
Right.
Just wait and get his ankles. Right. I mean, I think that you're going to see, I think it's a different person, and I think it's our team being scared of repeating Perryman could stop him from getting drafted.
All right, so that brings up my next point. So the draft is less than 2 weeks away now. And the Ravens are still sitting at 22. Obviously, they're not making any trades until draft day, and they're going to try to cash in as much as they can. Haven't had a real chance to talk to you much about this yet. Obviously, Scott and I have kind of beat this horse dead. I'd like to know what your take is. What do you see the Ravens doing at 22? Do you think they trade up to go after their guy, which is what Scott feels? Do you think they stay at 22, take whatever falls to them, best player available? Or do you think they trade back and try to get a couple extra picks earlier in the draft?
I know Ozzy's not here anymore, but I think Ozzy put us in a place where we have to trade back. I think that
Agreed.
I think that he lost his second round pick. I think they're going to trade back. Now, if they stay at 22, I like Metcalf if he's there. And I also like Eric McCoy out of Texas A&M, center, 6'4", 303, long arms, 33-inch.
Right.
Played really well. He's a junior. Give you another year to keep him in the league. And Metcalf's biggest problem is health. I'll admit that. It's been an issue. But again, let's tie back to my specialty. As a Terps fan, Stephon Diggs left the field literally every game with a hamstring injury. 100% of Terps games, he pulled up lame and walked to the sidelines.
Very true.
And he went to the Vikings. Magically, I've never seen it. I don't know what the NFL has, but it's way better medical staff than the college has. There's a ton of money in college. I don't know why we can't get the medical staff they have, but apparently it's different. So hopefully that same thing could be true of Metcalf.
And look, I like DK Metcalf for a lot of reasons, and I think, like, this is what I was trying to explain to Scott last week, this team sorely lacks a true number one wide receiver, but that true number one wide receiver for the Ravens has to fit a different mold than your diva type wide receivers like the Antonio Browns, like the Chad Johnsons of the world when he was around, and Odell Beckham was the guy we were on last week.
Our number one would still probably be most play teams number two, a TJ Hushmanzada, a Hines Ward.
In the day. Gritty guy that's not afraid to throw somebody in the ground, to use his hands more than just catching the football. And I think DK Metcalf checks off those boxes.
Yes.
For me, the only problem I have is the importance behind the first round pick. You cannot afford to swing and miss on a first round pick anymore. You can't. This organization has failed on too many first round picks over the last couple of years that they can't afford to miss, especially in the critical stage that this organization's in. They're on the cusp of being a contending team. If they really want to be a perennial contending team, they got to build through the draft. And yes, next year is going to be sexy because they're going to have a ton of draft space, which is awesome. This team hasn't had that.
Cap space.
What did I say?
Draft space.
Cap
tons
space.
of draft space
Yeah,
coming.
tons of draft space coming. Tons of cap space coming. So that's going to be an appeal, but you've got to rebuild from the ground up, and it starts in the draft. And that's why I think, as appealing as DK Metcalf is, there are some other wide receivers out there, the Hakeem Butlers, the N'Keal Harrys. Depending on how the draft goes, typically what happens, and this is usually what you'll see, is once a wide receiver goes off the board, teams start to go into panic mode because they don't want to miss out on their guys, and you start seeing a run of wide receivers. But if DK Metcalf drops all the way down to 22 and is there for the Ravens, a lot of these other wide receivers that I think have a lot of talent and meet the Ravens' needs will still be there in round 2, that if you can get an extra pick to make up for that second round pick we don't have, I think trading back is the smarter thing.
So he seems to be sliding constantly.
Yeah. They were talking top 10 pick when the draft, everybody's first started doing their mock drafts, and now they're talking that the Ravens could have a legit shot.
Almost everyone is saying he'll be the second one for Mississippi State drafted.
Right. A.J. Brown.
Yeah. So,
which I would love to have A.J. Brown. If somehow he made it to 22, hands down, you pick him.
Isn't he like 5'9"?
Yeah, but there's just he is the most
Speed,
he
man.
is the most complete wide receiver in this draft. He's another guy that's not afraid to throw a guy to the ground. He's not as obviously he's nowhere near the physical specimen.
He'd
that
be
DK
really good on
Metcalf
Denver
is.
with Flacco, but how's he going to block for Lamar?
Nah, I think he'd be all right. I think he would be okay with that.
I could not get blocked by a 5'9" guy.
I don't know, man.
Really? I don't think Hines
All right,
Ward
there's
was
a
all
few
that time.
5'9" guys that could beat myself seriously.
But the hardest I ever got hit in my football career was by a guy that was like 5'7", blindsided me and took the air out of my chest, like literally knocked the air out of me. So 5 guys below 6 foot can still put up a punch and can still put up a battle as far
Metcalf
as
can
blocking.
just stand there and you can't get by.
No, you're absolutely right. He's a physical specimen. But I think the more important need for Lamar and this offense moving forward is making sure you have the proper protection for Lamar. And I think a guy like McCoy, to your point, if he's there, I think you go with the offensive lineman and come back later in the second round or third round and pick up a wide receiver that fits the needs. Then you're killing 2 birds with the 2 stones there. Versus.
So if you can trade back and manufacture 2 2s.
Oh, absolutely. Hands down, I take it.
So I that's kind of, if they can get a 2 and a 3 and then combine that 3 with a 4 or 5 and get 2 2s,
right.
I think that's where, because you need guys that'll produce now. You can't just keep trading back and get 6 third-round, 4th-round picks that are all projects.
I don't think
guys
DaCosta would
now.
be that stupid.
But if you got two 2s, you could get a linebacker,
right.
You could get a center, you get a wide receiver, 2 of those 3 positions
exactly
taken care of
or
that can
pass
produce
rush.
now.
Yeah.
A linebacker that I was looking at in middle to late second round is Mac Wilson out of Alabama.
Yeah.
6'2", 240, former 5-star. He played all 3 years, not much his first 2 years, but started all the games on the 3rd year. His junior year, 71 tackles, 2 interceptions and a sack. And his sophomore year, he had 4 interceptions. So he does have some playmaking abilities.
Right.
And he's the 4th or 5th linebacker coming off the board. So you could definitely see him in the mid to late 2nd round if we do trade back.
Yeah, and a linebacker obviously is a position of need. They also need pass rush. So there's a lot of things that I think trading back is appealing because, like you said, if you can get either a high 2nd and a high 3rd or somehow work out 2 seconds out of the deal, I would absolutely do that because, again, you're filling more needs early in the draft with better talent. Now, one linebacker that we already have in the fold, Pat Onwasu, signed his 2nd-round restricted free agent tender. He's going to earn just over $3 million this season. Still working out the same type of structured deal for Michael Pierce. He's another guy that they're going to probably put a 2nd-round tender on. They have until the end of next week to get that done. Onwasu, it was kind of interesting prospect. When I first saw him, I think he came up, 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. I can't remember for sure. I didn't really have high expectations for this guy. He seemed kind of lost out on the field. But what I saw out of him last year is exactly why I was okay seeing CJ Mosley walk for the money that he walked for. And this is something I wanted to ask you a little bit about because, again, we haven't had a chance to talk about this. What was your initial reaction or even now, what is your take on CJ Mosley not being a Raven anymore and following the money to New York?
I mean, I would have loved CJ Mosley back. He's a great player, but I think that there were a lot of people overpaid this offseason. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like the NFL knows the salary cap is going up and hasn't told the players yet because the percentage of cap currently is getting pretty ridiculous.
It's pretty predictable the way that the salary cap goes up year in and year out.
Yeah. So I think he was overpaid. I don't think that you can do that with all the holes we have. Like you said, we have to have so many positions we need to fill, right. And it would have really ate up our cap space for next year. This year, you got to build through the draft because we're not very desirable, especially on the offensive side. Nobody really knows who Lamar is.
Right.
You got to have Lamar stop fumbling the ball. For God's sakes, Lamar, stop fumbling the ball.
That's got to be focus number 1A and 1B.
Everyone keeps talking about accuracy for Lamar. I'm really not all that worried about the accuracy. Yes, it was off a little bit. Yes, he was better in college. The size of the ball apparently has something to do with the accuracy, but the size of the ball obviously has something to do with his fumbling problem.
Yeah.
You got to put it away. You got to put 2 hands on it. That's the biggest thing for me. I don't care if you're going to miss a wide open receiver every now and then. Just stop laying the ball on the turf.
And you know what's kind of funny about that is if you look at Harbaugh's career, like as far as his tolerance with guys that fumble the football, specifically running backs, he has a very, very short tolerance for guys that fumble the football. Typically, that's the quickest way to get in Harbaugh's doghouse. And to see Lamar continue to fumble throughout the year and all that, I was kind of a little worried that Harbaugh might, jump the gun on kind of throwing the towel a little bit in on Lamar, or maybe, bringing in RG3, especially considering down the road they were in the running for the playoffs.
Yep.
And the fumbling didn't stop. I mean, it's not a problem that was like early on when he first took over and then got better as his year went on. It stayed pretty consistently a problem.
And it was worse than even looks on paper because he did recover a bunch of his own fumbles.
Right, exactly.
Which is because he's an amazing athlete.
Right.
And there are not many people that could have got that ball back in their hands. But
very true.
I don't want to see it touch the turf whether you pick it up and rush for 60 yards afterwards. Like, we don't need a trick play where you fumble the ball and then run past everybody.
Right.
No, thank you.
That's very true. Now, I'm going back to the original question about CJ Mosley. I'm right there on board with you. I thought that CJ Mosley, kudos to him for going out and getting paid and getting the money that he got. And like I kind of told Scott a few weeks back, is these teams like the Giants or like the Jets, like the Browns, like, you know, some of these non-appealing organizations had to do this over the course of a couple of years, where they had to position themselves to have the cap space available that they can overpay guys like this, because who the hell wants to go play for the Jets? The only way you're going to get players there is if you overpay for them. And that's what happened this offseason. That's why we saw the Zadarius Smiths of the world, the CJ Mosley, we were talking about maybe a Luke Kuechly type deal at the $12 to $13 million range. He far surpassed that. And that's I mean, again, for CJ Mosley, right player at the right time for him to cash in on a big deal.
Well, there was a comment today because of the news breaking with Russell Wilson signing his #1 quarterback deal of all times, $35 million a year, highest paid quarterback,
highest paid football player.
Yeah, and there was a morbid comment that the ESPN analyst made that I like. It's like highest paid quarterback is like the oldest man on earth. It's like short-lived. Another guy's coming, and I
that's very true.
It.
That's very true.
You're highest paid for right now, but the next contract's gonna beat it. CJ Mosley, he just reset the market. I mean, because he's not the best linebacker in the league. He's probably top 5, like 5. He's not 1 through 4 there. He's number 5.
Right.
So I guess, 3 through 8. But he's paid #1. So the next one of those guys that is in that top 5 is going to surpass him. And then because it's a hard cap league, it's not baseball. We can't just write blank checks. Somebody else loses.
Right. Exactly. All right, Brian, you've been quiet over there.
I've been fuming over here.
Yeah? Fuming? What's going on?
Gotta hate those Capitals.
Yeah, man. I was kind of look. There is nothing like playoff hockey, man. I'm telling you, like it's got to be one of the most entertaining spectacles from a sports standpoint of all the sports. I mean, I really truly believe that. Like the intensity turns up across the board. It's hard hitting. It's it's either high scoring because your greats and your all-stars show up when it matters the most, or you've got great goaltender matchups. There's just so much appeal about it. Even for somebody who is the non-hockey fan, even if you don't understand the rules of it, you can appreciate just the speed of the game, the effort of the game, just it's nonstop action. And the Caps in the first 2 games of the series against Carolina had really jumped out to early leads and convincingly, had me convinced that this team was on another warpath for another Stanley Cup going back to back. But then late in the games, we kind of saw the intensity for the Caps drop back a little bit.
You saw the Capitals do what they've done in and year out when it comes to the playoffs. They jump out to an early lead, and then they almost go to prevent defense.
Right.
Or it's just the defense deteriorates. I mean, Backstrom has been disappearing in these playoffs like he does in the past.
He had a huge first game, though. That first game, he had 2 goals, 2 big block shots. And this is kind of what I mean by playoff hockey, right? So Backstrom has struggled the last 2 games. But in that first game, like they had jumped out to a big lead. Carolina had charged back and got within 1 goal late. Backstrom started throwing his body in front of pucks, one after the other. He had 2 big blocks late in that game. That's something that a veteran leader does because he's committed to the bigger picture in winning that hockey game.
I mean, game 2 went to overtime, but game 1 I thought was even more exciting because when you had, we were up by 1, you had a last-minute penalty power play by Carolina. Yes. So they were up, 5-on-4, and then Carolina pulls their goalie. So you're watching 6-on-4 hockey. I don't know how you guard 6 guys, and they didn't seem to know either, but they did it well. It's just sprint speed skating.
I couldn't sit down.
That's kind of what it reminded me. It's like Apollo Ono in the Olympics. You're just speed skating behind the puck.
And
it's just unbelievable.
And then in that game, especially in that 4-on-6, Brandon Holtby was a brick wall, man. He was making sure that nothing was going to get by him. And I admit that the defense did step up in that 4-on-6 like I haven't seen in a while.
Right.
I mean, it was great to see those guys participate. But what was the one factor that happened? They got out to an early lead, and they let it slip away. I don't know what's going on with the Capitals right now. I don't know if the whole Stanley Cup hangover is starting to catch up with them because, you know, what we're going to talk about in Game 3. But you saw it at the end. It's the third quarter is where things start to fall apart. It's like they lose their energy. They start to play prevent defense. They're not going after the pucks. They're not clearing the pucks out of the zone fast enough. They're getting very ticky-tacky with the passes, too. I think they're getting too cute with passing the puck around instead of putting the puck on net, trying to get deflections, trying to get the puck in the back of the net like they do at the beginning of the first two quarters.
Some of those ticky-tacky passes were awfully pretty. You got Ovechkin to Oshie with that touch. He almost used Oshie as a backboard. It wasn't even a shot by Oshie.
That was, I'm not going to admit, that was very gorgeous.
That has always been a kind of...
It's been a nag on the Capitals.
It has for years, as they always try to make one too many cute passes. Now, I hadn't seen that really much this year, and I thought in the first two games they didn't do a whole lot of that. You know, and one of the cool things I thought about Game 2, you know, obviously not cool. The Caps give up the lead. The game goes to overtime. But in overtime, and literally just within the first, 2 minutes, I think, defenseman Brooks Orpik, of all people, who only had 4 goals in his career of 151 playoff games, hits the game winner. Of those 4 goals that he's had in the playoffs, 3 of them have been game winners for that guy. That's pretty impressive.
Was that the empty net goal? Was that his?
No. This was the game in
one.
This is actually the game in overtime.
Okay,
where he won the
Got
game
you.
in Game 2. But yeah, so all right, let's talk a little bit about last night's game, Game 3. We were sitting here doing the prep for the show and watching this game. Frustrating.
It might have been one of the most frustrating games I think I've watched all year from the Capitals. I mean, they came out very flat-footed. They came out like they had no energy. I think they came out thinking that, okay, we're up 2-0 on the Hurricanes. They're going to come out with no energy. We got this. We're going to come out. We're going to sweep these guys. We're going to get a break. We're going to, you know, be able to take a break before.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Yeah, you saw they got to put they got goose egged.
Yeah,
which
we still won.
Not just from
I know you were going to throw that out there.
Not just from a goal standpoint, but you had talked last night about the unbalance of shots in this game.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, I got that statistic right. It was unbelievable. Like, I had to do a second take. So the Capitals had only 18 shots to the Canes' 45 shots.
45 to 18.
That is
But there was only
unbelievable.
one shot to the face that mattered.
All right, so we got to talk about it.
It's the only important part of that game. We lost Game 3, okay, but we won the fist fight.
So we lost the battle but won the war. Is that where you're going with that?
So Alex Ovechkin, as intimidating as he is, as big as he is, he's really not been a fighter throughout his entire career.
Nobody's been dumb enough to try him.
And I think that's it. I think most people in the NHL, most players, now albeit some of these NHL players aren't really wired right. And it could be because they've taken some pucks to the head over the years. They've taken some hits to the board. I don't know what it is.
They don't have any teeth to worry about.
You're
fine.
You're special
but
type of
typically,
crazy.
yeah, right. But typically, they're usually pretty smart enough not to challenge Alex Ovechkin to a fight. Not only Scott and I talk about poking the bear. This guy apparently, from everything that I've heard, just kept at it with Alex, trying to egg him on to intentionally draw Alex to a fight.
Alex asked him, "Are you sure?" You could see it.
You
Are you
want
sure?
This is
and
what
he
you
said
want?
yes, and hit him again.
Oh my
and
God.
He did drop the gloves first because he's better at fighting.
Apparently. You know what's funny? If you haven't seen this fight yet, there are clips out there that show it from like all sorts of different angles. And it's great to watch. If this is one of the really strong appeals about the NHL, as crazy as everything is about sports and trying to make the game safer, the real big appeal with hockey is the one thing is that they're allowed to fight in that league. Yeah, they get penalized for it, but they don't do anything to stop it. They don't do anything to prevent it. I think that's cool with hockey, that you know that you're signing up for that, and if you're going to take the long-term effects from it, you signed up for it.
Which is why they were able to have a conversation before the fist fight started.
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
not like in baseball where you have to like pretend you're walking to first and then like rush to the pitcher. It's just like, are we going to do this? Let's sign up.
But what I thought was kind of funny about this fight, right, is You know, I'm not a huge boxing fan, but I watched a few boxing matches in my day, especially when I was younger, when the heavyweight division actually mattered. And I watch, obviously, some UFC. My buddy Gene and I, we go to Buffalo Wild Wings or Green Turtle. We watch the UFC fights there. And anytime a fight's getting ready to start, they show the cards on the TV of the two guys getting ready to fight. You know, they show their height and their weight and all this and their wins and losses. And one of the stats that they show is a guy's reach, their reach. And I've never really seen it play such a factor as it did in this hockey fight, because Alex takes this guy by the jersey and literally extends his arm out as far as he can. And the kid is, and mind you, this kid is a rookie in the NHL, 19 years old. And he is just
a lesson.
He is just flailing punches at Alex, and he can't connect on anything. But Alex is just one-handing him, right-handing him, one after the other that is just connecting on the side of this kid's head until he couldn't function anymore.
So he blacks out. He hits his head on the ice. He's in the concussion protocol,
Yeah.
and he's missing game 4. So don't pick on Ovi.
Yeah. Do not challenge Ovi to a fight. There are two guys on this team, personally, and I'm a big guy, and I can handle my own. I'm not getting in a fight with Alex Ovechkin, and I'm not picking on Tom Wilson either. Those are two guys that I will leave alone.
Just in case some of the Capitals are watching, I'm not fighting any of you guys. So just, and the rest of you can pick on Fred if you need to.
Yeah, don't send Basher my way. I know that guy can fight. I've seen him put up his dukes and take a hit or time or two.
So you know what this reminded me of? I just thought of it on air, so you might be able to help me out. So I think it was last year, they had two guys fight. They went to the penalty boxes, and they agreed that they were going to fight as soon as they got back.
That was Tom Wilson.
Yes,
that was Tom Wilson.
That's the second best
Yes.
remembrance of a hockey fight.
I forgot all about that. That was
amazing.
classic.
They literally were agreeing in the fight, like, we're just going to finish this again as soon as these doors open.
And they did.
And they did.
They threw their
came
stuff
out.
down.
Like, they didn't even bring their sticks or gloves with them from the penalty box. They just came out fighting.
Oh, it was great. I forgot all about it.
To make it a movie, right? It was almost like Drago. I will break you. Are you sure about this? Of course, the Russian reference.
And the reach works because it's the only sport where they're wearing a shirt. You can't hold the man at a distance when you're a boxer shirtless or UFC person shirtless. So he literally has him on a leash and is beating him.
Oh, it was great.
Great.
It was great. I hope the kid's all right. I hope he gets through the concussion protocol all right.
But he asked for it.
But he did. He asked for it, and that I'm sure.
And Ovi gave him like 2 or 3 options to change his mind.
I hope he learned something from it. But Brian, you and I were talking last night a little bit, and one of the things that you and I are kind of on the same page with is I think that a former coach, last year's Stanley Cup coach, Barry Trotz, was kind of, in my opinion, shortchanged as far as not giving him his due.
Oh God, yes.
As far as being a Stanley Cup winning head coach, the first Stanley Cup in franchise history. You don't pay this guy. And everything that I had heard was that they really weren't that far off money-wise. So nonetheless, Ted Leonis doesn't pay him, and he ends up signing a deal with the New York Islanders to be their head coach. I'm hearing it's a possibility that these two teams could meet up if the Caps advance.
As long as the Islanders win their series and the Capitals come out and actually, I don't know, get off their duff and actually show some motivation and win the series against the Canes.
Right.
Yeah, with the way that the playoffs restructure, Barry Trotz might get his revenge because the Islanders are a stacked team. They're a very, very scary team. They're young. They're
good
hungry.
and young team.
Oh,
they're
quick.
A
very young team. And with Barry Trotz behind the realm, don't be surprised if they might make it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals here, folks.
And there's nobody out there on another team, a competing team, that knows this team and their strengths and weaknesses better than Barry Trotz. If you don't think it's going to be motivation for Barry Trotz to come into Washington and beat the Capitals to advance, regardless of what happens after the fact, but to come into Washington and eliminate their chances of repeating, that's got to be a huge motivating factor for Trotz.
Because I'll even tell you this much. If he was behind that bench in game 3, he would have been up and down that bench yelling at those guys, you got to go out there, you got to play hard. Basher, you got to go out there and start knocking some teeth out. Ovechkin, you get the intensity up. Oshie, you go out there, you do what you do. You keep getting near that goal. Whenever you get a puck, you shoot it towards the net. And that was one of the things I think last year he preached day in and day out. put pucks on net, get the deflections. What happens is what's going to happen. As long as you get that puck on the net and you let things, you make the goalie have to work for it.
Right.
You have a better chance of winning, and you didn't see that. I don't think you've seen it all the series either. I think it's been very finesse, kind of like the 2 or 3 years ago Capitals that we're used to seeing. I think that's what we're seing now, which is what I don't like. I like the high-end intensity, what the Capitals were when they won the Stanley Cup just last year. But I honestly think if Gary Trotz was behind that bench, I think it might have been more competitive. I don't think they would have won. Because just the way that the Canes came out, I mean, that stadium was rocking last night. I mean, it was just
I think Brian's been a fan too long.
Am I drinking the Kool-Aid?
I think he's a spoiled Caps fan that wants them to be wire-to-wire champs like they have been a bunch of regular seasons.
I see what Pittsburgh has done.
I know that.
No
you
reason
sound
that
like
the
you've
Capitals
seen what
can't
Pittsburgh
do
has
that.
done.
All right, I've gotten my heart broken way too many
agree
times.
with you.
All right, man.
I think this team needs to capitalize
They're
on as many
still up
championships as they
2-1,
can.
guys.
I
know.
shed tears over
We're
the Capitals.
sounding like they're lazy at home, losing
No.
0-3.
Well,
They're
listen,
up 2-1.
it is 2-1.
I am fiery about my Capitals, but it's just like
Carolina was a really hot team at the end of the year. You weren't not going to sweep these guys.
They
No,
were,
of course
but
not.
You don't come out flat-footed like that, though.
And you gotta come up and
Yeah,
you gotta
they
step
got
up.
skunked. You
You
can't do
gotta
that.
step up in Game 4. You can't afford to have this series get tied. There's too much mental behind that for a team. It gives them too much momentum going into Game 5. They gotta come out and perform in Game 4.
Absolutely.
Are you giddy yet, Ryan?
Oh, here we go,
Are you
baby.
giddy?
Yes, let's do it.
It's time for some Turtle Talk, some Terps talk with our BS-bird himself, Ryan Schammel.
So the overreaction news, we'll start with that for the week. So Bruno Fernando, shocker, is headed to the NBA draft.
Right.
And also Anthony Cowan is headed to the NBA draft.
I think that was more of the shocking news for some fans.
It's a
out there.
shocker if it's 2 or 3 years ago when you have to stay there because you put your name there. So
Right.
what people are missing is the new rules. So important dates here. So you had to announce your name for the NBA draft before April 21st. So that means some of these players, including Jaylen Smith, that said he's coming back next year, can change his mind until April 21st.
Right.
That tweet, that press conference means nothing until the 21st passes. So I believe him. I think he's coming back. I don't think he's going to go test the waters, but he could. And so could anybody else on that bench, even if they have no chance of actually being drafted. What that means is you can then go to the NBA Combine, which is May 14th through 19th. You can even hire an agent now because people are going to overreact with that, because the next news will be Anthony Cowan's agent is Jay-Z. or and Bruno Fernando, will also hire an agent. Then you go to the NBA Combine, and then by May 29th is when you have to decide whether you are going to stay in the NBA draft and stay with your agent, or whether you discontinue your contract with the agent and return to college. You lose no eligibility. It's basically a job interview.
It's basically a job interview, and the player is seeking counsel whether or not it's feasible for him to enter the NBA draft this year. I think if anybody is a realist when it comes to Anthony Cowan, I don't see any NBA team, first round, second round, giving this kid a legitimate shot this year in the draft.
But there was no reason for him not to go.
Exactly.
Because
I agree with that.
he doesn't have another year of eligibility in college past this. So you
Right.
go this year, you get feedback, and hopefully it helps him. I mean, yes, Bruno Fernando improved greatly last year. And so did Herter. I mean, yes, he went to the NBA, but the changes were immense. Now, people, I don't give Coach Turgeon as much flack as some people do for not having improvements, because I think we had the Alex Lenz, we've had the Herters, we've had Bruno. But what if just by luck Bruno improved so much because of some of the things that he was told by the NBA coaches that he saw? Maybe they saw things that Turge didn't. So why would you, as a Maryland fan, not want Anthony Cowan to go get that feedback, to go learn from the best that are coaching the world's greatest athletes, and have him come back? Now, the problem is, because people don't know the rules, they're overreacting, they're tweeting out, they're saying, you're not ready, you're terrible, who do you think you are, all these things, which is ridiculous. Stay off social media. Like,
Right.
This is a recruiting thing. We don't buy players. They have to want to come here. So anytime you represent a Terp fan, you represent the Terps. So whether you're talking to this guy, which basically right now, Bruno and Anthony until May 29th are recruits. They can still come back to College Park. So you should be wishing them well and telling them all the fond memories you have and being jealous about and trying to make them want to come back, not being negative. And even if it doesn't affect them, Bruno's probably gone. I agree. He even made a tweet about Angola, stick with me, I got you. Because, a lot of people support him, get here. He's going to send money home eventually, things like that.
Let me cut in before you go too
ahead.
far there. So just so that we're staying on course here with Bruno. For me, I think Bruno, if he goes to this courting session and the NBA doesn't assure him that he's a top 15 pick, in my opinion, I think the smarter move for him is to come back to College Park, because I do think one more year and not being in the class with all the top recruits from Duke that are going into the draft this year, the Zion Williams, the Barretts and all those guys, I think next year he is 100% a top 15 pick. Do you think it would be smart of Bruno to come back if they can't guarantee him a top 15 slot?
The Terp fan in me says, yes, I think you should come back if they don't say you're number 1 pick. But the reality of it is, with today's NBA, in order to become a top 15 pick, I think he's going to have to show his outside shooting, which they don't. Bruno is an old school true center. He's a little bit better ball handler than Dwight Howard, but that's kind of the best comparison is Dwight Howard.
Ooh.
Well, Dwight Howard now is terrible. He was pretty good for a while.
Right.
I still think you want primetime Dwight Howard, which I think Bruno could be, but he's not super desirable. So if you do see Bruno back at Maryland, of course it's going to help us. He's one of the greatest players to ever play at Maryland.
Right.
But I also think he's going to have to be showcasing his skills, and he's going to be shooting more long twos and more threes than you would have liked him to shoot.
Right.
He shot a few threes this year. I have no idea what his percentage was. I'm sure it wasn't good, but I remember a few going in, which is always fun. But, that always doesn't matter. As long as your center is making a three. Look at the Michigan game. Both Michigan games we lost were the same thing.
Yeah.
Their 7-foot-tall center missed their first 6 threes.
Right.
And then he hit his 7th three. Literally both games. And that 7th three was the straw that broke the camel's back. As soon as that happened, both games were over. And it was unbelievable how they mirrored each other.
I agree with that. And I think we're both on the same page with Anthony Cowan.
He's coming back.
He's coming back.
If he doesn't come back, it's just because he doesn't want to play for these fans.
And that could very well be
a possibility of Daryl Morcell.
Yeah, so I brought this up last week when Jaylen Smith announced that he was coming back to the Terps, that he had put a post on Instagram saying that he was coming back, and right underneath the post was a comment from Daryl Morcell that said, "But I'm gone," with a little sad face. I know you had mentioned to me off the air that he has some interest in some other local colleges. Could we really see Daryl Morcell at another college next year?
So if you go back to the January quote-unquote losing streak, after we won 6 in a row, and then everyone thought we were Duke and that we should never lose again, there were some negative comments made, especially about Cowan, because he was up and down. I don't actually think many were made about Morcell, but he came to their defense and said that Maryland fans, they're like, who are you to be making fun of these athletes? You guys are terrible. We're still people too. All this stuff,
Right.
And really, I think all this hangs on that. Now, yes, is there a little bit of entitledness from the Maryland fan base? Do we think we're a top 5 program when we're really probably a top 25 program? Yes. Do we have unrealistic expectations because of the Gary Williams years of the coach? Yes.
100%.
But it's 2019 and social media lets people be keyboard warriors and not have to stand up to you when you say the thing. So you're going to find mean fans everywhere. With that being said, if he just is burnt out of it, that's him. He's got to take care of himself, his mental health. And he's probably not going to the NBA. So college is what he's going to do showboat with. So if he did transfer, he would sit out next year. He would play his senior year. I've heard he's got a lot of interest in Georgetown. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope that Daryl Morcell is our hustle defense, our glue guy.
Yeah,
I think
agreed.
he's our Shane Battier. He's that guy you need to hold your
Shane
other
Battier
shooters
type,
together.
maybe not on the same skill level, but the same type of player. Yes,
I won't give Shane Battier that much credit.
I guess you can.
But,
as Maryland
jeez.
fans.
Yeah, but and then after he plays his senior year, even let's say it is Georgetown, he would then be able to transfer again without any penalty because he'd be a grad transfer.
Yeah.
So he could really, or anywhere else. So he could go, seeking a title. He could transfer twice in 3 years, looking for that ring. I think he has a good shot at getting a ring here. Like
I do
I don't
too,
think
and
on rose-colored glasses.
I do too, and we talked about this, a couple years, we talked about teams in the past and what Morcell kind of compares to, and I think for me, the best Terp comparison for me was Byron Mouton. He's very similar in his skill set, and like you said, he was kind of that glue piece. He was like the only guy on that starting roster that didn't make the NBA, didn't make a name
The other
for
four
himself.
starters all made the NBA.
Exactly.
Only Steve Blake had a super good NBA career, but everybody else
had
made
their
the
dance
NBA.
in the NBA. Byron Mouton was that piece that kind of held it all together, and I think if the Terps were to get a Bruno back, obviously Cowan's more than likely coming back, and Morcell stayed around for another year with the new recruits that they have coming in, this becomes a very deep Maryland team and could be possibly a top 10 team as far as rankings out the gate.
If Bruno comes back, it'll be similar to 2 years ago where they came in number 3 preseason. You'll be top 5 ranking with Bruno back. Now again, I don't think Bruno's coming back.
I don't either.
The early rankings still have us in the top 10, but that's not with Cowan gone. That's not with Morcell gone. If you see Cowan and Morcell leave, they'll probably be top 25 maybe preseason. But actually with Cowan gone, they won't even probably be that. But yeah, they still have some talent. I don't think Cowan's leaving, so I'm not even going to discuss who's going to replace him. Obviously, Eric Ayala already runs the point a lot.
That's your boy.
I love Eric Ayala. I truly, right here, I've said it before. I think that he will be an actual 4-year player, though I thought that of Daryl Morcell. So please stay and be a 4-year player, Daryl Morcell.
He just needs a little bit more confidence and belief in himself, I think. Sometimes he's just too passive.
I think he's passive. I don't think there's any confidence issue. My man plays like a 40-year-old that's under control.
Are you his agent?
I've never seen a man play so slowly, and yet no one can come near the ball. It literally looks like he's carrying every dribble as slow as he dribbles, and he's scanning the floor, and he's facilitating, and when he does shoot, he's really good at it.
No, I know he had one of the highest percentages 3-pointers on the team. Sometimes I found myself
you don't like him because he's very
shoot the ball.
Yes,
Shoot the ball.
He's very similar to Mr. Guy down in Virginia that's got your panties in a
No,
bunch.
that guy, no pun intended. That he is just a prick. I don't know. There's something about his look. Something about him. There's nothing about Ayala's look. It's just frustrating.
We don't know
That's how
anything
you really
about
feel,
Guy.
Fred.
Guy's probably a good person. I'm gonna be the Maryland fan that says nothing mean about everybody.
He's a prick.
But I do think there's something about some people's looks. Remember we were watching Purdue together.
Oh yes.
The Purdue center to me looks like a Bond villain, so it just makes me not like him. There's nothing wrong with him, but he looks like a Bond villain, and so did the last center that played for Purdue.
yeah, I know you're talking
Giant
about. Yes.
monster of a man that was there
Yes.
last year. I can't remember his name, but for some reason, the big white guys that play for Purdue all look like Bond villains the last 8 years.
That's how they grow them out there, man.
They
Corn
don't
fed.
grow them there. They're getting them from Russia. them and Ovi are friends.
All right, man. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the football program at the Terps. Obviously, a lot of changes going on with the organization or with the football program. A lot of eyes on the program and a lot of transparency on the program. Scott and I have been talking about that, and you and I have talked about it off the air. What are some important dates maybe coming up, or some things to look forward to in the next couple of weeks with this team?
So April 27th is Maryland Day, which who knew that was a thing, and it's also the spring game. It's going to be at noon. Women's lacrosse plays at 4:30, men's lacrosse at 7:30, both versus Hopkins. So there's a big time rivalry.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're doing them all in Bird Stadium. It's one entrance, and
Single
and
admission.
they're running, basically 12 to nighttime. So the men's team will play under the lights at 7:30. Should be a good time.
Are we getting down there for that or
If
what?
it's good weather, we should definitely go down.
All right.
We already tried to hit up Loxley, get some
Media passes.
I haven't heard
Loxley,
any
if you're
updates.
watching, man, at Fred BLBS, hit me up. Let me know. I want media passes for that. I'll be down there. wearing my red and black.
Yeah, I'm sure
proudly.
there's another way we can start looking at that and trying to get a hold of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to be less of an exciting media or spring game just because
I was going to ask you, like, who are some players that might be in or out of this game? Because obviously there's some new players coming in that are transfers. Do we see some of these guys? Do we see the Anthony McFarlands of the world? Like, who can we get excited to watch in this game?
Yeah, so Keandre Jones and Savoy will both be playing in the game, or at least, barring any changes. They've both applied for waivers. They have not had answers whether they're going to play next year. I think Savoy is a foregone conclusion. He has a lock-solid reason with his brother dying and his mother being sick and things. Keandre Jones, they literally never said what his reason for a waiver would be, so I don't know what that is. It's probably just I followed Dwayne Haskins mistakenly to Ohio State. I should have been here forever.
Right.
But maybe it's something else going on. That's his private life. He can do what he wants. So those two should be there. Now the Joshua Jackson transfer from Virginia Tech will not be playing, and neither will Legendre, the freshman quarterback. Those were late signings, and we didn't have much early signing period presence because Loxley had just became coach like 2 days beforehand. So not as many people started spring semester as a usual year.
What's the update on Kasim Hill? Have you heard anything about him?
So he's still on the active roster. So no one's bit on the transfer, but I mean he can transfer up until the beginning of the season, maybe even during, since he's not playing, and it'll still count as his sit-out year.
Do we see Piggy and Hill in this spring game?
Hill's not ready to play. He's still
recovering.
Yeah, still recovery.
Okay.
So it'll be Pigram and wow, I can't remember the backup quarterback's name right now. I'm blanking
drawing a blank.
But anyway, really the big people to watch will be Anthony McFarland, Jashwan Jones.
So he will be playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Antoine Brooks was mic'd up the other day.
Yeah.
I love the transparency. It's so much more fun this year.
I do too. And this is like, again, I think it's more so, I don't think it's forced. I don't think it's like, hey, we're trying to change our image here. I don't think that that's what it's about, but I think they're in a position where they almost have to do this.
I think they did it because they had to,
right.
But I think this is going to be a trend. I
like it.
I really believe that other than the straight blue bloods that don't need it, the Clemson, the Alabama, I think you're going to see a lot more of this. They always have active social medias, but just the mic'd up players in practice and the footage of practice and all these things that are like, hush, hush. Let's be real. Spring game practice is not real practice. You're not practicing plays. You're finding out who players are. You're finding out who your playmakers are. You're staying in shape. You're making sure your team gets along. You're building rapport.
I agree.
Oh, no.
It's about that time, Ryan.
Yes, it is.
All right, so before we get into this, I want you to know I try to tie everything to Terps since I am the Terps BS expert. I had to change all storylines to make that fit. It's like a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing, but 7 degrees of Terps.
Oh, man, it's about that time. And as I do, and I've done in the past with outside hosts that have come in, I kind of give them the floor to write their own script for a 2-minute warning. It's something we do on every episode. Scott and I, we rotate back and forth as to who does it. So, Ryan, you are on the clock, my friend. Your 2-minute warning starts now.
A teammate of former Super Bowl champion starter J.C. Jackson can no longer wear his helmet. Some guy by the name of Thomas Brady. The NFL and NFLPA have been testing helmets since 2015, but they agreed for the first time last year to prohibit lower performing models. By the end of last season, only 32 stubborn players, including Patriots quarterback, were wearing helmets that are now banned. According to statistics by the NFL, by week 17 of last season, 74% of players used helmets ranking the top category. As a nurse, I think it's sad we are not at 100% of top-rated helmets. The Ravens fan in me hopes since they took Brady's helmet away, he may play without one, giving the rest of the league a chance. Maryland's Stephon Diggs is no longer the highest-paid wideout on the Vikings. His 2018 contract has been beat. Adam Thielen put together a career season in 2018 that included 113 receptions for over 1,300 yards. For the second time in 2 years, Thielen has landed a huge contract extension, even though he still had 2 years remaining on the first extension from 2017. Per Thielen's agent, 4-year extension is worth a total of $64 million, 35 guaranteed, and up to $73 million with incentives.
Whew.
Seems to me the Vikes are going to run out of cap space with the Cousins contract and raising the cost of their receiving core for 3 years in a row now.
That's right.
Just 4 months after leading the defense of Maryland men's soccer team to a national championship, Donovan Pines made his MLS debut for the DC United Saturday night. The homegrown 6'5 defender turned in an impressive performance in the United's 3-2 win over the Colorado Rapids, holding the 5th highest score in league history scoreless, showing tight defense, accurate passing, and even registering assists on a Wayne Rooney corner kick. According to the Audi Player Index, which I don't even begin to pretend to understand, Pines was the 4th best player on the pitch during the match, tallying 625 points. For simple reference, United star Wayne Rooney had just 246 on the night.
Wow.
A teammate of Maryland's most hated player, J.J. Redick, are in the news. Presumably looking at Birdland BS Twitter feed, TV cameras show Amir Johnson sitting on the bench and scrolling through his phone. His team down 16 points late in the game one playoff
You did
loss.
fantastic.
You
man.
freaking
good.
nailed it.
I got all my jokes in. I didn't get all the news in.
That was great.
You did
I
fantastic.
only had
man.
4 things. I got through it.
And that was on your first run. No practice or nothing. Nailed it, my friend. Good job.
Good job.
He's
man.
a big
Good job.
liar. I've practiced a
Oh,
lot.
come on, man. Take the credit where you
Take
can
the
get it.
credit where you can get it, man. That was a lot of fun, man. That was great. That was an awesome show. Again, appreciate you, Ryan, for filling in for Scott this week. Did an awesome job. Everybody out there in social media land, let us know what you thought of Ryan. Drop a comment in the field. Appreciate you doing this, man. It's been a lot of fun.
My mother-in-law just joined the chat. I don't know how long she watched,
watch
but
yourself now,
hi,
man.
Ryan, right at the end there. I like it.
Want to remind you guys to check
She's
us
been
out.
sniping you out, man.
Right. Want to remind you guys to check us out on the website, birdlandbs.com. You can find all of our episodes, learn about a little bit of about each of us, me, Scott, Brian. On there, you can find all of our links for bigplay.com. You can find their Twitter page, download the Big Play app so you can watch it through the app, which is pretty cool. Follow Birdland BS on all the social media accounts. You can follow it at Birdland BS. You can follow me at FredBLBS. Scott is at ScottBLBS. Ryan is at Terps_BSpert. Brian at ITBlakeBLBS. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat. We're all over all the social media platforms. Make sure you hit like, follow, subscribe, and share to be a part of BS Nation. If you want your opinions and topics to be heard on the show, use the hashtag #That'sBLBS. Your comments could become part of the show or one of the topics that we use. As always, be sure to check out the audio version of the show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and all the popular apps out there. Thanks for tuning in. As always, for Scott, who is out in Honduras, I'm Fred. This is Ryan. That's Brian. We'll see you guys. All right, it's time for the after party.
So I guess now's the time to rat you out that we missed the Tiger Woods talk. We just skipped right over it.
Oh,
shit, we did, didn't we?
That didn't even cross my mind.
I tried to stop you when you were transferring from the beers. Did you see my hand go over?
No.
Because I was like, so when you were drinking beer this weekend is what I wanted to get into, but you pressed the button anyway. I'm like, let's just let it go.
Completely
Is that
forgot
that
about
now.
it.
Is that why you were
talk.
looking at me like, what just happened?
Well, I don't know, but I definitely was trying to. I was trying to find a way to work it in nicely after we had skipped it, and I
we
was
can
like,
talk
"Oh,
about it
when are
now.
you drinking this beer?" I was trying to get into it, but
Didn't even cross my mind. All right, so
I was
let's
trying to be off camera over here.
let's talk about it, man. So if you haven't heard already, come out from under the rock you're under. Tiger Woods back in the news, and this time for all the right reasons, as he gets his first majors title in
14 years.
in 11 years, 14 years for
Masters.
the
Yeah,
Masters,
Masters,
right?
yep.
11 years it's been since his last major. This was a guy that had a lot of obviously personal issues that have been all over the news over the past, years. He's had a lot of health concerns, a lot of injury concerns, back problems, and for me being a bigger guy and not in the best shape of my life, I know all about back problems and knee problems. This
Maybe
guy,
not for surgery type back problem.
no,
No,
not that,
no,
not on
that's
that
brutal.
level, not on that level. But man, look, I've played golf. I played golf for years. Haven't played in a while, but I used to play golf, and I'll attribute a lot of the reason that I played golf. One, because my uncle played a lot of golf growing up, and I kind of went behind him and played behind him and followed him. But the main reason I kind of had an interest and actually gave a crap about golf was because of Tiger Woods.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people. The only names I
majority.
can come up with from Tiger Woods were all Tiger Woods' rivals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the guys that he went against
The
for
Vijay
those years.
Singhs and the Phil Mickelsons and all the guys that he went against. You know, Jordan Spieth maybe, some of the Under Armour guys never knew, but
Roy McIlroy, like a
Yeah,
couple
but,
guys maybe.
I mean, it was all about Tiger. I mean, Tiger
Yeah.
brought a whole new audience in. Tiger was the reason that all the purses went up.
Right.
Tiger was the reason that they got all the big TV deals. Supported even the women's PGA Tour became a much bigger thing and even TV worthy with the Tiger craze
Right.
of what golf was.
Yeah. Really, since he started struggling and started going through all the personal battles, I have not really sat down to watch an entire round of golf. I did for the Masters this year.
I did not because I was at work, but you know.
I did. I literally, I wasted away, what was it, Sunday, that I sat there and I watched that entire round, hole 1 through hole 18 when he wrapped it up and won it. And I would never have done that for any other golfer and for no other reason other than to see Tiger actually pull this off. And really, the excitement behind which, you know, for most people, golf is a boring sport. Who the hell wants to watch golf? It's like tennis, you know, it's this little white ball that gets hit around, whatever. It was so intense, like going down the line. There were 8 or 9 guys that were literally 2 shots back with like 3 holes left. Anybody could have won this thing, but everything kind of broke Tiger's way. And it's Tiger, man. Tiger in one of, I would say his, you know, there's really no home field advantage, but Tiger plays so well at Augusta. To see him put it all together and play as well as he did, for me, it was awesome to see. I don't know about you, Brian.
No, it was inspirational. I mean, that literally was like the last 5 holes. I literally stopped what I was doing. I had housework to do. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to grab me a beer. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to watch the last 5 or 6 holes. I mean, especially what was it, hole 16, where he hit that ball dead nuts on, and then it had some type of spin where it must have been maybe 5 or 6 feet away from the hole. You're like, oh my God, he's really got a shot at this now. And you're right. It's like you're rooting for the other golfers just to screw up. Everyone,
I was.
Shank it.
Every time
shank
they
it.
showed somebody else that was in contention, I'm like, miss his putt. Go in the water. Go in the water. And literally the 2 guys he's playing against, I think it was on the 15th or 16th hole, both of them hit the ball in the water. And I'm thinking, just get it on the green. And usually in the past, Tiger has always been an uber aggressive golfer. To see him at 43 kind of play the safe bet and place the ball in between the 2 bunkers, setting himself up for a long putt, but playing the smart role, knowing that your other
putting in the water like the other
exactly, not going for it when the other 2 guys, really the 2 guys that were on that hole prior to them had also put the ball in the water. So you had 4 out of the last 5 golfers on that hole at that time had put the ball in the water. I don't know if the winds had been like what happened at that particular point, but like everything shifted and nobody, I mean, everybody was hitting, like they commented on it. Everybody was hitting the ball 15 yards short of their mark.
Yeah, well, they started early Sunday because of the weather. So I mean, I'm sure there could have been something going on at that point with wind.
The golf god smiled on Tiger. And it was great to see it because for so many years, I know they talk about the baseball gods, the golf gods, the hockey gods, but literally the golf, I think that if you believe in the golf gods, it was amazing to see this because it was just all of a sudden you literally thought for many, many years that Tiger Woods is done. He became a laughing joke on the PGA Tour. So like, oh, here comes Tiger Woods. You know he's got nothing left. Why doesn't he? I mean, for many years, I mean, we were all saying it. Why doesn't he just go away, retire? You're done. Your back is done. You're riding around in a golf cart. And even that was hurting him for many, many years. He's like, this is just painful. Just the bumming around in the golf cart was hurting him. It was there's few people that you get giddy about this like like Michael Jordan is a good example, and Tiger Woods is another one who's just a transcendent sports athlete where whatever you're doing, you drop what you're doing and you just watch, and you just get inspired.
That's a very, very good comparison for me. Like growing up, obviously we had the Wizards, which are Washington's team. I was just never really a big NBA guy, and I'm still really to this day, I'm not a big NBA guy. I'll watch it, but for me, when I was younger, the 90s, the draw for me to the NBA was simply Michael Jordan, and it was everything about the production behind the Bulls and Michael Jordan specifically. Every game that you watched of Michael's, you knew something spectacular could happen. And like that was the aura about Michael Jordan. James says Tiger had his strippers with him. Something with
thanks, James.
He either had his strippers with him or he had a heavy dose of painkillers too, because I'm telling you,
he was one swing away from
had to
the
go there,
DUI.
yeah.
So if you watched Tiger in the clubhouse, they had an interview with him afterwards, and they handed him an iPad and had him watch a montage of all the people that said that he would never win a major again, that he was washed up, that he's just there as a puppet, this, that, and the other. And all you're doing is literally a single camera footage of Tiger watching this, and then you're seeing what's on the screen. It's going back and forth, and then you just come up to Tiger just smiling. And I was like, you can't see something better than that. Like, you know, he didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to talk bad about these people, and he never he never went back at anyone about any of these things. Like even Davis, he hasn't came back, but he's always been talking about it. Like, it was just silence. You never heard anything about Tiger. He just hid.
But you think about Tiger's career, right? Outside of the injuries and outside of some of the personal issues that he's had, when you really look at Tiger, he's a friggin' human being, right? We all know somebody that's had a DUI at some point in their life. We can't hold these guys to this crazy standard just because they're a professional athlete and they make millions of dollars. Yes, it's important. Your image is very important for your sponsorships and for your fans and that kind of thing. I get that. But at the end of the day, this guy is a human being, and he's been in the spotlight since he was a little kid. I mean, like, when you go back and you look at, like, this guy was talking about beating Jack Nicklaus when he was like 7 years old. He's been in the spotlight since he was a little kid. And think of some of the entertainers that are out there, right, that have been in the spotlight since they were little kids. Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, like all these like celebrities that have been in the spotlight since they were little, that have had some sort of crazy spout in their life.
I don't trust anybody that's that squeaky clean. That's just all there is to it.
Everybody has skeletons.
Like, I trust Justin Bieber over Tim Tebow. Like, I mean, at least I know what his faults are. Tim Tebow has probably got people buried in his closet. Look at Bill.
You're going to piss off Scott.
You are going to really
this.
upset Scott.
Scott, I can smell your lips on this mic, and I'm going to still talk about.
It's like he's French kissing you right now.
You're going to need Listerine to clean that thing when you come back.
I can still talk about your boy Tim Tebow right now. But Bill Cosby, he's spotless for 45, 50 years, and now he's like serial rapist. Like, you can't trust those guys. If they're not real, they're not real.
Right.
Like, you can't, if you don't believe you could ever be as good as them, there's something going on.
Yeah.
There's something going on.
I agree. And that's what I'm saying is, like, I feel good for the guy. And there's a lot of reasons, again, that you can look at it and you can say, well, all this stuff with, his ex-wife and all that stuff that you could really take as one side of the argument and just hate him because of that one thing, the one mistake that he made in his life. But again, this guy, his life has been part of everybody's life that's grown up in the 90s. Like, everything that this guy has done throughout his entire life. It's all been public knowledge.
You look at Michael Phelps. Right. Literally every time Michael Phelps came back from the Olympics, he got in trouble.
Exactly.
He got a DUI. He got a marijuana possession. He got all these things. Like, you did 3.5 years of being perfect and hiding and training, and now you're going to act up, but someone's going to catch you because it's 2019 and there's cameras everywhere.
And to Nikki's point, I mean, he has been a bit of a train wreck. Train wreck was part of his life. Yes, he had a rough patch of things, and I think that's where the beauty part in this comes out, is that this guy was able to get over that hurdle, put his life together, and get back from, literally everybody was counting this guy out. Everybody was telling this guy, hang it up, you're done. The years of winning are long past you, and he proved that wrong this weekend. I think that's awesome.
All right.
In my opinion.
Plus, you still get a chance to go after Jack Nicklaus's career record, too. I mean, so that's back on the table. He's still only 3 away now.
Right.
3. So if we're thinking Tiger Woods is back, that whole I'm going to catch Nicklaus is back on the table, too. So that's exciting.
Well, do you have any opinions on The Bachelorette, since that's what was going on in our chat room?
Yeah, apparently that was popular in the chat room.
Oh, man.
You can thank your wife for that, by the way.
I don't know. No, it was not. That's what I'm telling you. She got into it. She agreed that we needed something other than sports talk to talk about. But
my God.
I can't say that
I'd
I
be
haven't.
shocked if she can name who The Bachelorette is without Googling it.
That's why I had to put it out there. I said, I'll watch it if Poe joins the Bachelorette. Then I'll watch it. You put the Orioles bird out there. You get Poe out there. I'll watch that.
I can't say I haven't watched it. My ex used to watch it all the time, so I would kind of get drawn into it. And then once you're drawn into it, you start to gain some sort of
I wouldn't
interest.
watch it. I'm not going to have time to do that. So
I won't anymore. That's for sure.
we'll get into the a little bit of Maryland stuff unless you see something on the boards.
Any other comments that you've seen that you wanted to bring up, Ryan?
What are the things you talked about? You were talking about Ryan, about Bruno's 3-point record. I don't know if
I saw
if you saw
3 out of 10.
Yeah, 3 out of 10.
30% is actually really good for her, but 10 is a very small
surprising.
sample size.
Do you know how many he made the year prior?
One. Yeah.
That was unbelievable. I'm thinking to myself, he had to have taken, I think it was only like 4 shots he took.
He took one. So he was, 1 for 4. That's still 25%.
Yeah, that's right. Unbelievable.
So, if he comes back, he's going to take at least 23s, and hopefully it'll still be 30%, and then he would be a top 15 pick probably.
Look, I just think NBA is totally different than the NFL, Major League Baseball. There's only 2 rounds to an NBA draft. Most of the time, none of the second rounders tend to make the roster. Some do, most of them don't.
G League.
They're in the developmental league, exactly. And even a lot of first rounders after the 15th pick are even questionable from some years. Some years are heavier drafts than others. And that's why I think just for him, if you're not guaranteeing me a top 15 spot, financially, I don't think it's smart, and I think that developmental-wise, he'll have a much better shot at being a top 10 pick next year.
And almost always the guys that aren't drafted are making more money overseas than the second-round guys.
Agreed. I mean, Melo Trimble, for instance, ex-Terp, he's killing it over in the Australian League.
And he'll probably be drafted this year.
Yeah. We'll see what happens there.
So another comment out there, Kel's mentioned this. I know it's something that just happened within the last 24 hours, is Russell Wilson got a big payday.
Yeah,
$35 million a season.
Yeah, he had mentioned that a little bit. I didn't get a chance to really talk much about it. As you said, and I think it was a very good point, yes, he's the highest paid NFL player right now. Tomorrow could be a totally different story. That's how short these things. At one point, Flacco's contract. Now, Flacco's contract was ridiculous regardless. But at one point, he was the highest paid NFL player. And then
now he's not even top 15.
Exactly. I mean, very quickly, because of the shifts in cap space or cap dollars, and because of teams, again, like the Jets and some of these other guys out there that can't draw it, they end up overpaying for guys. I think this is a smart move for Seattle. Russell Wilson already won you a Super Bowl. This is a guy that
on a third-round contract.
Right. And I haven't seen really any drop-off in play with this guy. I think he's still probably got another good 4 to 5 years, very productive years left in his career if he can stay healthy. And look, he is one of those mobile quarterbacks that kind of defies all the odds. Everybody looking at him and why he dropped to a third round, to your point, wasn't because of his athleticism. It wasn't because of his ability to throw the ball. It was mostly around his height, right?
The Kyler Murray.
Exactly. And this guy has kind of defied all the odds and proven that he can win in the NFL. And I think that this is a smart move for Seattle.
So another one, and I don't know, this is a YouTube video that kind of has gone viral too, was something Stephen L. Jackson brought up, was I don't know if you saw this, was when the umpire, I think it was like a AAA or AA game, where in the stadium, the home team has a Labrador Retriever who goes and grabs the bats.
I did see
and
this.
then the umpire, being a-hole, decides to take the bat and throw it. Well, the dog, God bless the sweet dog, goes over, still retrieves the bat and takes it away. And that's what Stephen L. Jackson comes up with. He's like, how do you do that? How do you do that?
I thought that was,
man. That's a D move.
That was exactly. I thought it was a D-bag move.
So, devil's advocate, we only saw that clip. If that's the only time that happened during the game and he wasn't purposely trying to make this
that
dog a
looked
thing.
intentional, man.
If you watch
it
the
was
video,
intentional.
I watched
you
it.
could kind of see almost that he recognizes out of the corner of his eye that the dog is coming, that he speeds up a little bit in his approach to the bat to pick it up and chuck it before the dog gets
He was
there.
scared the dog was going to bite him.
I don't think
Oh,
that had
come
anything to do
on.
with it.
I'm just saying, this
It's
is
a
very similar
service
to where you
dog.
watch the video of the cop doing something. You don't know the last 20 minutes of that video.
Yeah, I get it. I just
So yes, if he is purposely like, this dog's making a mockery of baseball, well, minor leagues makes a mockery of baseball all the time. Like,
Right.
that's their job. Their job.
this guy is a guy taking his
Yeah.
job way too
The
serious at the minor
leagues-
league level.
The minor leagues
there's
is
a
where
reason he's
you
in the minor
take
leagues.
your family for entertainment,
Exactly.
not for baseball. And minor leagues is fun, especially the Aberdeen Ironbirds. I mean, you're single A short season.
Right.
When's the last Ironbird that got to the majors? Like, most of them don't even start that low if they're ever going to get to the majors.
Actually, there have been
There
quite
been a
a
couple
there have been
few,
quite a
yeah.
few Aberdeen
Nick
Ironbirds.
Markakis is one that comes off.
Matt
by-
Wieters
yeah,
was
Matt
one.
Wieters.
Yeah, some of the pitchers, Chris Tillman.
Like I said,
some-
I'm not that great of a baseball fan.
No, that's all right.
No,
but
it's all right, man. That's
honestly, actually, what happens is a lot of the draft picks, like the first round, second round, and third round draft picks that sign right after the draft, that's where they get their start because that season's just kind of getting underway after the draft. So a lot of players get their start there. They're not there.
So the
very long.
Shorebirds are already playing.
Right. The
because it's
Shorebirds
regular
are already
single A.
into their season and all that stuff. Like you said, Ironbirds are a short season.
Single
They
A
don't
short
get
season, yeah.
they don't get started until later in the year, which is right around the draft time.
Yeah.
So a lot of the first round picks, that's their first stop before moving up.
Mm-hmm. So last comment of the evening. This was too early in the chat, but I've been kind of keeping it. So it was about the new Orioles regime that we got. So Jay, I'm gonna botch your last name.
Musante.
Thank you, Musante. He brought up. He said he'd much rather watch the Baby Birds play than what the half-ass team that we had last year. And I kind of agree with that.
100% agree.
The motivation you're seeing these kids, especially with them actually just running out the ball. I
Right.
mean, Manny Machado half-assed it. Even Adam Jones was another one who I think kind
I
of
do like seeing triples. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
stealing bases.
3 in 1 game.
Yeah.
Stealing bases. I mean, I can't remember the last time.
That's part of the game that really appeals to me. Like, we're seeing a lot of like small ball things that we've never seen, where we haven't seen in a very long time with this team. Guys that aren't afraid to hustle. That's important. Guys running balls out. There's just a lot of appeal if you're a baseball fan, not just an Orioles fan. If you're just a baseball fan, there's a lot of things to get excited about and actually go to the yard and support this team. I understand why the seats are empty because unfortunately Baltimore is a very fair weather fan city as far as put a product on the field and we'll support it. Put a good product on the field and we will support it because anytime that this team has been competitive, fans are there in waves, but unfortunately the diehards are more inclined to go to these games. And when you watch the games on TV, that's why you're seeing 5, 6, 7,000 people there. It's the appeal of it for the average fan just isn't there.
Yep.
Anything else topics wise you guys want to hit on?
I guess I can touch on the recruit that the Terps had in town real quick since that'll be old news by the time. So we had 2019 shooting guard Hakeem Hart. He was a decommit from St. Joseph's because of a coaching change. So he had a 3-day stay at College Park this weekend. It's an official visit, and he has no other official visits scheduled. The dad made clear that he will not be signing with anyone on the spot at these visits, so there's no negative for that. That he's going to take about 3 days after any visit to make the decision because he's one of the top recruits left in the country.
Right.
So he's one of those guys that we could replace if we have a Daryl Morcell leave, an Anthony Cowan leave, or a Bruno leave. Because technically right now, even though we're recruiting 4 or 5 people, we have 0 open scholarships.
Right.
So it's all about who's transferring. There's rumors about Bruno going, Cowan going, Morcell going. There's even ideas of Tomajic and Trace Ramsey possibly transferring to smaller schools and getting more play time.
That makes sense for them.
So there's obviously reasons, like we have no scholarships available, and there's 4 or 5 players that we're actively recruiting.
Right.
Which is a weird spot to be in because you can't actually be like, here's the scholarship. You got to be like, we probably have you a scholarship.
Right.
So it is what it is.
I've always kind of wondered that, like, for me, right, if I was a basketball player and I was deciding on what college that I was going to go to, if I legitimately didn't see myself as a starter there, outside of, like, if I was going to a school specifically for education, I was going to the University of Maryland because I want to go there for X, educational wise, that makes sense. But if I'm just going there purely for athletics and I want to really enjoy the experience, if I'm going in not knowing that I'm not going to be a starter in my first 2 or 3 years there, I never understood the appeal in that. So like a guy like you said, Tamajic and that kind of thing. Obviously,
who I had really high hopes for going into this season. I really did. When he played his freshman year, he had spurts where he looked like he was going to be really good. He hit the three.
This year.
He was, a decent post presence. But yeah, literally every time this year, the same thing with even Bender. You put them in, they fouled someone, they turned the ball over, and that was seemed to be their job.
So for me, I would understand them transferring out and wanting to go to a smaller college where they're going to be the guy.
Yeah.
Where they're
especially
going to get
this year, he
time.
thought he probably had the same thought of me. He'd be more relevant. He'd play more minutes. He actually played less with all the freshmen coming in,
right?
And he didn't show out as much as he would. So with another big recruiting class come in, he might get buried deeper and deeper on that bench. So if you want to go play basketball, it might be somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Anything else you want to hit on?
I guess I can touch with the Virginia Tech transfer, enter the transfer portal. Now, again, this guy will probably also enter his name in the NBA draft because there's no negative to Kerry Blackshear, grad transfer, so he could play next year. Averaged 15 points and 7.5 boards, 6'10", 250. So if there's anybody that can even attempt to replace Bruno, that seems like as close as we have in the transfer portal. Now, again, he can pretty much go anywhere he wants with those statistics, and he may go to the NBA. They're saying it's pretty unlikely. They think that he's most likely going to follow his ex-coach to Texas A&M because Virginia Tech changed coaches while he was there, is the thought process there. But if anybody can replace Bruno, which I don't think no one, let me put that out here too, just in case. Bruno, thank you, because your floor slap, your let's go. I've never seen a player more effective at changing an entire arena than when you do that. Somehow you commanded the 17,000 fans more than any player I've ever seen at any level.
I think he had that Gravis Vasquez kind of effect on the team in that sense.
And just like the Xerxes-like body of his just makes you want to respect whatever the heck he says.
Dixon was another one who could do it too. I mean, he could get the crowd pumped.
So. Dixon was a very a quiet assassin, whereas Vasquez was very much the flamboyant, vocal leader.
So you're never getting that from anybody that comes back, and that was great. And just to see the Bruno, I mean, you're the #1 NBA recruit on your team, and you're hustling over. I remember one where Cowan was on the floor. He hustles over to pick somebody up, and he was coaching up one of the freshmen. I want to say it was Lindo. It could be somebody else. I'm not going to put that out there. But you got to run over to pick him up. Like, he's telling him, like, this is what we do. If somebody's on the floor, doesn't matter if they can stand up on their own. Doesn't matter if they're hit hard. You each grab a hand. You stand them up. You show you're here as a team.
Right.
And you could, you picked it up right on the mic because it was right there. And he's like, you got to run over here. And it's like, it was a coach on the floor. And for a sophomore to be like that, man, if you do come back, I can't even imagine where your leadership skills could be. 4 years of Bruno, which will never happen, but you would, you'd be in Len bias territory.
Yeah.
He'd
be.
I'd love to see him back. I don't think it's gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. And 4 years would never happen. And I'd want you to go do you and get your money.
Right.
I do think there is the argument because of the if draft rankings are real, which they aren't. If you go and find out that you're a very late first or early second, that early second's pretty scary. So again, you can make more money playing back overseas, and you're not worried about going overseas.
Right.
I know NBA is your goal, and you can come back and be top 15, but worst case scenario, you can still make more money than being a second round pick.
Agreed. All right, man. Well, let's get out of here. It's been an awesome show. Ryan, appreciate you again coming in and sitting in for Scott. I'm sure he appreciates it. I didn't get to see him in the chat room, so I guess he wasn't watching us live.
He's drinking too much.
We were
Doing
going to
other
reenact
things.
the wedding photo. That was our one goal.
Would have been hilarious. I
Hilarious.
should have just done it, but
I can still smell your lips.
Could have taken your shirt off, Ryan. That would have been pretty epic too.
I did promise that. We got some photos for you.
Oh,
Scott.
yes, we did.
appreciate you guys tuning in as always.
They'll be on
Thanks for all
Facebook
the
later.
comments as always. We'll see you guys next week. See ya.